Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our podcast network, head to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by my brother, Dagan Moriarty. Dagan, a good day to you, my friend. How are you?
Hello. And that's very nice.
Yeah.
Very good day to you as well, my friend.
Thank you.
I feel like it's been overcast for about a week.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm always that guy. I was like, I kind of prefer cloudy weather to sunny, but it's getting to me. It's starting to get to me. It's like, where's the sun now? I'm getting nervous. You know,
the sun can stay away forever. I've never related to that at all. That was the best part of San Francisco, was the weather. It was just always 60 degrees, cloudy and foggy for most of the year.
Yeah.
And same thing with Seattle. I loved Seattle as well because I think it rains something like, 300 days a year or something like that in Seattle.
Holy shit, is that right?
Something like that. Wow. Something high, 250 or something crazy.
I like those vibes, but don't you feel like there is something with mood, with the vitamin D or something, where it's like I feel a little bit morose. Maybe that's just me. Maybe it has nothing to do with the sun. I don't know. But if the sun came out,
Colin
I still
can't
felt
compute because he's like, that's how I always feel.
Yeah,
like, there's no change. Maybe the look on your face was processing, but nothing was happening.
Yeah, I don't. Mike is like that too, and I've known many people like that where it's like, oh, I wish it was sunny. I need to be out in the daylight. I need to open the curtains or whatever. I'm like, I'm never like that. I don't give a shit. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely needed this. Like, I don't like being outside, but I like it when it's sunny. Like, for some reason, like if I looked outside and it was sunny, it was a better day to be inside for some reason. Like, I don't know what it was. It was just like nice. There was something about like the bright vibes coming in through the window. It's just like, oh, this is nice. I don't know.
Chris Reagan, welcome back to the show. When we were doing Sacred Symbols yesterday, I didn't realize that you guys were on the schedule. So this is just Sacred Symbols plus Dagan.
Oh, yeah.
So welcome back. Good to see you again. How is your life?
Fine. I think I'm realizing something. Right? That I've been on the precipice of being sick for a while. And I think I understand why. I think I know what it is. It's allergies. Yeah, I haven't thought about it. I haven't thought about it in a while because it's been a while since I've even had to deal with them because they just haven't really been that much of a factor out here. But I'm realizing like, oh, this is literally just like my eyes are like kind of itchy and like I'm like a little stuffy, but not quite like sick stuffy. I'm like, oh, this is what this is like. I totally forgot, which is annoying because I thought I might have like beaten it or something.
Yeah.
But I guess
that happens because my allergies have gotten worse as I've gotten older for sure. I couldn't even compute when I was a kid what people were talking about. Like, what are your allergies? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not allergic to anything. Just put the grass pollen in my face and all the rest. Well, I'm glad that you're hanging in there, my friend. It could be the palm pollen down in maybe in California.
Right.
That affects dogs as well. And finally, Dustin Furman, executive producer. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you today?
I feel great because, and Dagan, I wanted to know if you knew about this. I successfully ordered an analog pocket this morning, which is the fancy FPGA Game Boy. And I'm pleased, but also, I put this order in and they get you with the small add-ons. Okay, the analog pocket's already super premium overpriced. It's $250 for this Game Boy thing, but it's amazing. It's the best Game Boy that's ever existed.
What color did you get, Dust?
I tried to get the purple, sold out while I was trying to get it. So I went with the blue instead, which is like a really vibrant see-through blue. Very, very happy with that. That was a close second. So I'm all right with that. You want to get the dock so you can play it on your TV, charge it with the dock. That'll be another $100.
Wow.
Yeah. But the thing is, it plays, you can put Super Nintendo, you can put Genesis, it practically runs anything up to, that generation. So it won't do PlayStation or anything, but.
Right.
So I was like, I got to get that. Then you got to get a screen protector because you pay so much. The screen's so beautiful. Hey, that's $16 for one. So throw that on there. All right. Hey, shipping, $40. $40 to ship this thing. So I'm broke now is what I'm saying. But I'm I'm happily broke because these are very hard to get. And so
beautiful.
I'm excited to use it. sparingly when I
premium product, premium, and they know it. Premium prices, analog, awesome. It's gonna be worth every penny, but you're gonna put out the ducats for sure. Yeah. Does it play imports, Dust, as well?
It plays imports. Stuff? It plays Game Gear. It'll play TurboGrafx, whatever their portable thing was. It'll play fucking anything.
Oh, Turbo Duo.
Anything, but you know what I mean.
Was that Turbo Duo, right?
Turbo. I think it plays Turbo Duo. Yeah. If you have the adapter for it.
Incredible.
But can it run Crysis?
Game Boy Crisis, dude. Has someone made that? That'd be awesome.
What about Lynx or something like that?
I think it does. I think the 3 adapters that you can buy are Game Gear, Lynx, and Turbo Duo. But
I love that they did a Lynx just to service the 14 people that
want to play the bad Ninja Gaiden fucking port or whatever was on it, or California games.
TurboGrafx, PC Engine, Neo Geo Pocket, Atari Lynx, Game Gear.
Pocket, right?
Those are
you probably
Neo Geo Pocket, right. Turbo Duo. What was? And Turbo Duo, right? Too. I'm sorry, Chris. What were you saying? I'm trying to get all of that.
I was gonna say you could probably jerry rig some crazy stuff to work on that thing, though. Because I remember seeing. What the hell was it? It was like somebody playing Doom on a potato or something. It was like it was like what? Do you know what I'm talking about, Dustin? Oh yeah, the pregnancy test.
The Doom on a pregnancy test. Yeah, that's
fucking dope.
It's insane. I love that. It's insane, man.
Yeah, that's so strange. I wonder how they get away with. I don't quite know how they get away with making basically the fundamentally same innards to create these because I guess it's not illegal to emulate, right? It's illegal to have the ROMs, so not technically like emulation is not technically illegal. So that's kind of interesting.
Kyle, Turbo Express.
That's what it was. What was the Turbo Duo?
Turbo Duo was there.
Was it the thing that you put in top of it?
2-in-1 with it had the card and the disc.
Right. Yeah, who had that, John?
Oh, I don't know. He had a regular PC TurboGrafx.
Right. Okay. That was the only person I think I ever knew that even had a TurboGrafx.
I think my friend Matt Colin, if you remember him, he was the only person I knew. And maybe Double Dork had one too, but I think those are the only people that had those.
Yeah.
Double Dork. I think that's the first time I've heard that name come up.
Yeah, that's new to me.
It's like a 90s cartoon nickname. Double Dork.
Double Dork, yeah.
Double D.
Double D, right? The Double D.
I don't even know their real names actually anymore.
Wow.
Just know them as Double Dork. Oh, I do. Phil and Sam. Yeah, Double Dork.
What's so weird about all of this is like how bespoke the hardware is, but how you could, because Dig, we were talking about it recently on a show. I don't know if we were talking about it or I was on another show about how you can get NES game, or I'm sorry, you can get Famicom games to work on NES. You have to just get an adapter that shoves in there, and then it's like very tight, and then you have to, but they work, So there's
that's
all these,
the Hudson Honeybee, right?
Was that what it was? Yeah,
I think it is.
It was like this red thing, I think, with a ribbon on it.
It has a ribbon,
right?
Yeah.
And you had to pull it. Because it went in so tight, you had to fucking like yank it out of the NES. All right, my friends, it's good to gather here with you today for an episode of Constellation. We have 4 good topics to get through today. I'm looking forward to it. The weekend is upon us. I feel like, just as an aside, I feel nervous right now. Like I have something to do, but I have nothing to do after this. I have no idea why I feel like that. Like when I'm like, oh, but I still have to do this, or I have to go meet someone and do this, or whatever. After this, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I think I'm just in a kind of a state of boredom, frankly, because I'm waiting for Spider-Man 2 to come out. Everyone on the fucking Sony teat has Spider-Man 2. We got to wait until October 20th, but in the meantime, we're going to replay Spider-Man, right, Dig? You're going to do that with me?
Oh, yeah.
Anyone else want to participate? You guys want to participate in that?
I'm not planning on playing it again. I won't be fresh. I won't be good on the show.
Yeah, okay.
And I only played it once.
Well, it's been a long-ass time. I mean, Spider-Man came out when Chris and I really just started the show. So,
right.
Like a couple months after that's crazy. And I was thinking about playing Miles Morales, but you guys are going to fucking hate this. Is that I want to play the PS4 version of Miles Morales so that I can get the trophies, because I already have the PS5 version's trophies. So it feels like a complete waste of time to play it again.
I like your honesty.
Thank you.
Oh my
so I'm going to have those train, subway interstitials and all the rest. All right, my friends. Let me look at I don't have an order of operations here. Dig, I think we'll put you last just because that might be good for our not getting demonetized on YouTube.
How can I instantly demonetize?
I don't think it really matters, but who knows? There's probably YouTube's been weird lately. I just was talking to Dustin about this. Chris knows this too. It's taking forever to render videos, or not render them, to kind of
process them.
That's the word.
Not always, though. I learned that today or last night. uploaded Sacred Symbols Plus tomorrow, instantly fixed. Instantly good to go.
The show we don't need, but the show we needed, Sacred Symbols the core Sacred Symbol show. Probably because it's 5 hours long. That probably has something to do with it.
That might have something to do with
it. By the way, nice job on the Jim Ryan, the thumbnail. Really disturbing.
It's a really feverish. I saw it this morning. It was the first thing I saw when I woke up, and it was really disarming.
Chris, I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't want to put you on the spot, Chris. Mm. But yesterday, I on the Sacred Symbols thread on iOS, I sent the picture you had sent us of Chris Christie, which is fucking hysterical. He's just so. Just in case people have not seen this picture, I don't know if it's coming through, but he looks like. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be overweight or not, but he looks like Humpty Dumpty in this picture.
Is that real?
Yeah, it's real. That's real.
I'll send it directly to you, Dagan. So
it looks like the thing about it is that it looks like. It almost looks like AI, but it's real. You know what I mean? Like it's like there's parts of it that look implied.
Yeah. Holy shit. Yeah, he looks cartoonified. I stopped paying attention to him when he shut down plans to make a new tunnel from, Secaucus going into.
Oh yeah, that was a whole conspiracy.
He didn't look like that.
Did you see him? He was on the debates and he was like, "Oh, what is it? Donald Trump is ducking the debates. I guess we'll call him Donald Duck."
Yeah, I saw that. It's like you're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to name Donald Trump. That's because Donald Trump just calls him fat. I think he calls him Sloppy Chris or something like that.
Yeah,
that's like his name. But you can't. But Chris, I brought that up because after that, and speaking of Donald Trump, I sent a text that I was laughing hysterically at. I don't know if it was as funny as I thought it was. And I was wondering if you could read it in a Donald Trump voice for us. It was the, because it's basically says CNN, Donald Trump panicking, faces life in prison, Trump at rally.
Yeah, I did see it. Yeah. Hold on. Wait, did you send it in the Sacred Symbols chat?
Yeah, the Sacred Symbols chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Donald Trump panicking, faces life in prison, Trump at rally. Mario, he's jumping around, swimming underwater. They're shooting at him. And you get to the end of the level and it says she's in another castle. I said, okay, you're on your own.
Very well done. Very well done. I always picture it in your voice. You do such a good impression.
You know what's weird? I do an impression of my friend doing an impression of him because it's the only way that I can do it.
I just laughed hysterically when I heard that because I'm like, that is such a perfect Trump thing. Like, he says he's in another castle. Okay, you're on your own.
Sacred symbols. What's so sacred about it? I don't know.
Micah and I have been laughing hysterically, although it's an old clip of him in the 2016 election when he was at that place and the lights went out. And then they came back on and he's like, turn them off.
Get them lights
turn off. Lights. It's... Dude, I'm sorry. The older I get and the more he's around, the funnier I find him. I got to be totally honest with you.
Oh, he's hilarious.
He's funny.
He's completely hilarious.
I was talking about this on Snark Tank where it's like, I almost wish he would, it would be my perfect reality if he would just come around every election cycle to just not even do a bunch of jokes, but make a bunch of speeches as if he's running and then like at the last second pull out. Like, that would be my... Because I don't want him anywhere near power, but like, oh my God, he's so funny. Like it's so funny. Don't give him his jacket. Don't give him his jacket. That was one of my favorite. Do you remember that where he like kicked that guy out? And he was like, he just told an entire audience to steal this man's jacket. It's insane.
Oh my goodness. Well, we'll probably see more. I couldn't even watch the second debate. I was going to that day. I was like, oh, I'll watch the debate. And then when it came around, I'm like,
I don't care. Really.
I can't do this because no one on the stage is going to win. So who gives a shit? This is completely academic at this point.
Yeah, it's pageantry.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump's giving a speech about princesses in another castle.
Yeah.
And he's how frustrating that is for him.
Did you see him where like the windmills are killing the whales?
Yeah.
Oh man.
All right. Let's see. I'm looking through this. You know what? Let's start with you, Dustin, because you just got back from Japan, and where's the Street Fighter announcer? We need him back. It's probably not even a real person. It's probably a pro. It's probably complete MIDI programming. But you came back. You did a Sacred Symbols Plus episode, which will have already gone live by the time this goes live, so people can go check that out about your travails in Japan. But I assume that one of the things you wanted to talk about, because it says here foreign food, right? What I like to call ethnic food. How ethnic is it?
Well, is the word ethnic offensive now?
I don't know. I don't give a shit.
Not really. I can't imagine that that's true.
I couldn't care less about that. Yeah.
I don't know.
They've already taken so many words from us, you know? They took the word that starts with an R that you call someone stupid. Can't say that anymore.
Oh no, that's out.
That's out. Yeah.
I'm not letting them. That's the line, dude. That's the line. You can't. You can't take any more. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was thinking about, because I wanted to tie it into Japan stuff, but I didn't want to go over stuff that we already talked about on Sacred or on the mailbag. And I thought this one might be good because I know we all have strong opinions about food in general. And we've had many food topics on Constellation, but I wanted to specifically talk about foreign food. And we can keep this kind of broad as far as the foreign food we love, the foreign food we hate. Maybe if you guys have tried some exotic things that you'd like to share. So a lot of this comes from stemming from my recent Japan trip, where I was pretty much forced to try, eat Japanese food pretty much when you're in Japan. You could go to McDonald's. I saw many of them in Japan, but you don't want to do that. You're in another country. You want to eat the food and check things out. So we did a bunch of different things, and food that we would eat here. Like in the morning, we'd have curry and yakisoba, like the cold noodles that you dip in stuff, eat that for breakfast, which that's something really interesting in Japan. People don't necessarily eat breakfast food for breakfast. They just eat normal stuff they would eat at any other time, which I actually was kind of down with. And we also ate tons of sushi. And I said this on Sacred, but the worst piece of sushi in Japan was, of course, the conveyor belt sushi, but I had to try that anyway. And it was still 10 times better than any sushi I've ever had here in the US. I got introduced to, normally I just like the regular tuna sushi, very kind of run of the mill. It's like the classic piece of sushi you think of. I got introduced to the fatty tuna, and it kind of has an unappealing name, fatty tuna. But when you eat it, it's this super smooth, buttery. It almost just melts in your mouth. It was totally, totally amazing. Unlike anything I've ever eaten. Holly is much more adventurous than me when it comes to food. And as we've talked about, I am not very adventurous at all. I'm more of a bitch when it comes to food. The one exotic thing, which isn't even that crazy because a lot of people have tried it here, that I did eat was cow tongue. And not down with cow tongue. The flavor was fine, just kind of like a normal beef flavor. But whatever I ate was insanely chewy. And it literally felt like chewing on an animal's tongue, like exactly how you would imagine that would be.
You're like Frenching each other.
Yeah, not at all good. Holly was into eating some of the different stuff that had squid and octopus in it. And I made a vow a long time ago I would never eat a squid or an octopus because they're going to rise up one day. One day they're going to rise from the ocean and they're going to remember who ate what. So
you've never had like calamari and stuff like that?
No calamari?
No, I will not eat it. I can't.
Calamari. I love calamari, dude.
Me too.
I can't do it. Holly was eating, I'm trying to remember, takoyaki, the balls that have squid.
Takoyaki, yeah.
Yeah, she was eating that. It was very cool. We were at this one street food. It was like a street, and there was all these vendors that were selling, street food at this temple, and that's where Holly got the takoyaki. But I saw a guy who I had heard of this item. I'd seen it on YouTube like a year ago, but he was holding it, and basically it's a giant pancake-looking object that is just simply a flattened squid. They just take the squid. They put it in imagine if you got a squid
hydraulic press,
and they put it in one of those things at Chipotle that they flatten your burrito, and that's all it is. It's just a flattened squid, and it's so gross because it is somehow turns out to be a perfect circle, but on the inside you can see this imprint of what the original squid looked like. And
that's so sad.
Yeah, so I saw a few different interesting things. My one big disappointment. And Dagan, we talked about this on Punching Up. I can't remember why. We were talking about horse meat. You definitely can get horse meat in Japan.
Yeah.
And if I had seen it on the menu anywhere I went, I was prepared. I wanted to order it. I wanted to eat it. The only time I saw it, which I wasn't looking that hard, was I was walking by somewhere and they had horse meat sashimi. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, that's chunks of raw horse meat. You just eat it raw. And I thought, Dustin Furman is not afraid of a little raw dogging, but when it comes to horse meat, I got to work my way up.
Yeah.
I can't go straight to the raw horse, man.
You gotta cook a horse, man.
Right. Yeah, you gotta cook it first.
You gotta ride a horse before you even cook a horse.
Raw. You gotta really want horse meat. Yeah. You know what I mean? They're making that established.
Yeah. You really gotta be a Mr. Hands.
Yeah.
If you're gonna take raw horse meat.
But overall,
don't Google that though. No, I was gonna say do not Google Mr. Hands.
Mr. Hands, Mr. Hand is from Fast Times. That's what. But Mr. Hands, I don't know.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Don't worry. Do not Google it.
Yeah. Fair enough. By the way, horse was available when I went to Iceland as well. Very mysterious meat. They have some. I had a bite of it. Someone else ordered it, and I remember he got sick that night. But I think it was because he couldn't deal with the idea that he just ate horse. I don't know why it was that traumatic, but
it's so bizarre.
I don't remember that guy's name, to be honest.
What's so what is so unedible about a horse?
Dagan, you were anti-horse meat on the pod, right?
Yeah, I was saying
it's gotta be
during that
so
episode. I mean,
muscular.
why that came up was because obviously Mike is on the episode, and she has her. She's known for her food takes. Bad food takes. That's up to you.
Fake food.
But I was saying, let's face it. But I was saying I established a long time ago, like a ceiling. Like I'll eat these animals, but there's no reason to go further than that. Even when that you got like the boutique jerky places, and they got like. The ostrich jerky and the alligator and the vulture jerky, whatever the fuck they're doing. It's like, I'll keep it to cow, pig. I'll eat veal, like, the duck, whatever the classic things are, but I won't go beyond that.
Sure.
There's no reason, right? So horse, why?
Yeah, exactly. Why?
Why?
Right.
So
go on.
To wrap things up, I actually realize I have it's been better recently, but I do have heartburn pretty regularly. My gut health in Japan was fantastic, to the point that it was odd because I was eating a lot of fried food too, because you can get fried chicken pieces, like just a little slab of fried chicken at convenience stores that is like 10 out of 10 amazing. And so I was eating that all the time. I was eating all kinds of garbage, but for some reason I was totally fine when I was there. As soon as I got back, now my stomach is totally fucked all the time. So I'm wondering if that relates, if there's something about just eating rice with practically every meal, if that does something. But I got to say, in general, I'm a big fan of ethnic or foreign food, however you want to say. And in fact, one of my favorite places here in town, there is a Mexican place that is amazing called Reyes Teca that we go to. They have amazing street tacos and all kinds of different stuff. So I love Mexican food, and I guess I'll throw it over you guys since I've talked quite a bit, but I know the Moriarty bros are obviously very Italian. Is it considered foreign food for you guys to enjoy Italian food since you are Italian?
No, because we this is like the whole argument about Chinese food. My friend Stephanie, who's Chinese, used to talk about this, where she's like, the Chinese food here is not Chinese food. Especially Szechuan Chinese food, so like what we eat on the East Coast, because Hunan Chinese food, which is largely what's eaten on the West Coast, is a little more true to form. And I didn't really like it. In fact, Chinese food on the West Coast kind of grossed me out a little bit compared to Chinese food on the East Coast, because it's interesting. But no, I think the Italian food, it reminds me of that episode of The Sopranos where they go, one of the episodes where they're in Italy, and I think Paulie is like, can't I just get a bowl of, pasta and gravy or something, like whatever he says. Because they eat a little bit more sophisticated. It's like we also talk about with pizza, but I think that it's recognizably Italian, but I think it's like American Italian, very very similar to how Tex-Mex is kind of American as well, and and other things too. So no, I don't consider that, and I'm not much of an ethnic eater really, with some rare exceptions. I used to Insomniac. I don't know if they still do this, but a lot of the guys there used to have a tradition during GDC of going to a really nice restaurant in San Francisco called Amber. It's downtown, Amber, India. It's called. And I imagine it's still there, and it's an Indian place, and they invited me there to go eat with them. I think it was like around Resistance 3's launch. And I was like, I'm young and I definitely don't want Indian food, right? But I'm like, I want to go to this thing and be with these guys and maybe write a piece or whatever. So I went, and I ended up loving it. I got, just basics, butter chicken, frontier style lamb and naan and various rices or whatever, but that's really good shit. So I appreciate that. I love ramen. That's why I was asking you when you went to Japan. It's so funny because I was so irregular when I used to go, well, not used to, but with the 2 times I went to Japan, because I basically lived entirely on pork ramen when I was there.
Oh yeah, it's
at
so
least for
good.
at least half my meals, and I turned into a salt lick when I was there. Probably, I don't think I think the second time I was in Japan, I like went 4 days or something without pooping, but I was eating, and I was like, I am so full, like I gotta poop. Because the other thing is the little thimbles of water that they serve,
the real tiny cups.
It's like, come on, man. When I was with Dustin in Japan, he would get like 3 of those at breakfast and just bring them all over so he can drink normal amounts of water. So I was very dehydrated when I was there, but I think a lot of it was just the salt and the stuff that I chose to eat, because me being overseas is not good. Like when I was in Germany, I ate some German food, but I'm like, I don't want to deal with this shit. I just want normal food, like, American food. So I'm not that down with trying too many deeply ethnic things. But, it's the other thing too, as someone said it earlier, it's like I think Dagan was saying, like, why do you need this? We have so many different options. I don't eat any seafood. I'll only eat terrestrial, like chicken, pigs, cows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know. There's some weird shit going on out there. And I don't want to point any fingers and be like, oh, it's a third world and stuff. There's some weird shit going on out there. Let's just say that. All right. Like, and they're importing some of it to other places too. And now and now it's kind of slowly seeping in to people. It's like, oh, should we eat bugs? Should we?
Oh yeah. Should we? Yeah.
It's like, no. And then I also found it interesting during COVID. What was so funny is those disgusting wet markets they have over there. And people were like, and they're like, oh, it came from a wet market. And I'm like, isn't that more racist than saying that it came from a lab? Why are you saying that it's racist that it came from a lab and not from this fucking disgusting ancient style wet market with all these gross dead animals and people?
Can we stop calling it that? Can we come up with a different name for the market?
It is it's pretty wet.
I have never heard that term. What the fuck is a wet market?
It's a moist market.
Wet markets are like butcheries and like just open air.
Oh,
not really found here, but places where you can go. Think of like a farmer's market, but in 1200 AD.
Right. Okay.
You can you can buy bobcat meat.
It does seem like a pretty damp place, to be fair.
Yeah, and a lot of it's exotic animals. Like, so they thought that COVID came from a pangolin, I think, right?
Yeah, initially, yeah.
Which is nonsense. It obviously came from a lab, but and I thought that was so funny at the time because they're like, it's racist to suggest that it came from a lab, and I'm like,
no, it isn't.
Isn't it racist to suggest that it came from their fucking disgusting wet markets?
Yeah,
it's probably less racist that it was science, but nonetheless. So yeah, that's how I kind of feel about it. I want to give a shout out though.
Sure,
I got to give a special shout out because of course you talked about American Italian and all that. Whatever. That's what we grew up with. It's good. It's great. I mean, I love it. It's what we grew up on, carbs and all of this. But I got to give a shout out to what we would refer to as Mexican food. Now, people say, well, it's really American stuff. And I'm like, that's true. But it was made by a lot of what we understand as Mexican food or Tex-Mex was made by immigrant workers, on farms. Like the burrito was made, I believe, in California, but by Mexican workers who was like, we have a tortilla, we have meat, we have some things from the fields, whatever, we put it together, we roll it up. And I find California style, I mean, that's the one thing that I don't even bother with here, to be honest with you, is like California has it so locked down with Mexican food and street meat and all that, street tacos and burritos and just whatever you want, that it's kind of sad in other parts of the country. And that's something, and it's like that in Texas and other places too, of course. I just never lived there, but that's the one thing I really do miss about California is just, the fat Mexican lady on the corner that doesn't speak a word of English, but she's selling tacos until 5 a.m. and they're fucking the best tacos you've ever had in your entire life. And you don't know how it's possible. And they're each $1 for some reason. And so I just love the sauces, the meats, I love tortillas and burritos and tacos and all that stuff. So I got to give a shout out. That's pretty safe ethnic stuff for an American, but that's about as ethnic as it gets. Cause I feel like, and I've said this before, no one eats better than us. Seriously, what's better than like Southern soul food? Or American barbecue? Like literally what's better than those things? And all these different geographic, we don't need any of that stuff. You keep your fucking bugs. You keep your pangolin, and all of the nonsense. And certainly, and Chris and I are on the same page about this. I don't know if he eats it, but I know we feel about the same way about this spiritually. If it's in the ocean, let's leave it in the ocean. I don't want to know anything about it. I don't want to discover it. I don't want to research it.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't want to eat it.
Generally speaking, I feel that way more with shellfish than I do with I do with just fish in general. Like, dude, I love sushi, man. Especially in like in like New York City and Los Angeles, you get like really good. I assume that's because it's just so close to the coast, but like you get some really good sushi there. I don't imagine it's even close to as good as Japan, but it's definitely like some of the best sushi you're gonna get, like probably in the US. Like you're not gonna get amazing sushi in, I would imagine, like, I don't know, fucking
Butler, Pennsylvania.
Well, just like in the Kansas, I don't imagine has amazing seafood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you have to access the seafood, and then you have to attract the talent that knows what to do with it too. Which is why I think those cities really fly. But yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, no, like when a crab, a lobster, a shrimp, like no,
because that's a bug. Briefly, the tradition with the crabs, where people are boiling them, they put them out in front of you. They got their eyeballs on them still. They're barbarically cracking them with hammers.
Yeah, dude.
And then using them as a delivery method for butter. That's all it is. Listen, if you're interested in just eating crab like that, you just want to eat butter. That's it. It's not about the crab. It's about the butter.
It's literally like, it's the same way I feel about people who like, I can't eat fries without ketchup. It's like, so just drink the fucking ketchup then. You don't like fries is what you're saying. It's I don't know, man. There's something about like people who argue that crabs and lobsters and shrimp, people will sit there and argue to your face. They will stare you in the eye and say they're not bugs, which is fucking crazy. They are bugs.
It's worse. They look like enormous bugs.
They're huge bugs.
But I love the taste. You gotta, if you really love the taste, you just kind of ignore that.
I understand. Fair enough, but also you should be eating roaches then. Because they dude, I seriously, I remember I stepped on a roach and I saw the inside of it once and I was like, that is fucking lobster, dude. Even on the fucking inside, they're the same.
It's like terrestrial lobster.
Yeah, it
might be delicious. Listen, if lobster's that good, I maintain there's two wonderful, like the best tasting foods are lobster and honey. Those two things, for some reason, it's like godlike, right? But you do have to get past the visual aspect of it because it looks like a giant bug.
No. You're doing it again. It doesn't look like a giant bug. It is a giant bug.
It's got them claws. And all the rest, it's got them claws, it's telling you to stay away.
If it lived on land, we'd probably be completely grossed out by it. But I think that's the difference is we don't have to deal with it every day.
I do have a theory. Yeah, that is probably true. They're also not drawn to filth in the same way. So that's probably there's an association there where it's lobsters, they're hanging out in the ocean and the ocean's tropical. It's like a vacation. Ooh. But the garbage isn't a vacation. That's where you're going to find roaches. I have a theory though, that I feel like because roaches are bigger, they're less unsettling. I feel like if insects were bigger, they would be less gross for some reason. I think it's because it's the way they skitter really quickly because they're so small that puts people off.
Stealthy.
If a cat was this big, I wonder if people would be grossed out by them.
That's interesting.
But you don't want a spider to be the size of a cat, I would argue.
Right. You know what's funny about that though is I don't remember where this video took place, but I know it's real. It's some foreign country where these little kids are playing with huge spiders. And I'm talking about spiders that are this big with legs that and they're just playing with them. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, that would scare me, but I'm significantly less disturbed by them because they're that big. And I don't know why.
They can't hide.
That's what it is. They can't, if I wanted to kill that thing, I could easily kill it because there's no way it's dodging me, man.
He can't be in your shoe,
Better not miss.
He can't hide in my soda can, there's it's not going to surprise me. I'm never going to be taken by surprise by it. I'm going to see that thing coming a mile away.
I love that point.
And that might be part of it. We're getting off topic.
Well, that's what it's all about, my friend.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm talking now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
I guess I don't know. I'm trying to think of the foreign because I grew up around a lot of Puerto Rican food, which is not that's not foreign to me. But it is like I haven't been able to find it really anywhere because it's very difficult to make in a way that's easy to prepackage or like make fast food. Like you're not gonna find fast food Puerto Rican food because it's just so specifically. It's I don't know. It would be like trying to find fast food steak or something. You know, it's like you could find like I guess like fast food beef, but you're not gonna find like, you know, arroz con gandules, like rice and beans at like a fast food restaurant and prepared that specific way, or like chicharron, which is like people think they know what chicharron is because like they buy like pork rinds and stuff. It's like, oh, it's chicharron, but it's like, no, man, it's like there's this when you roast a pork in like an oven for a long time and you glaze it and then the inside of it cooks and then you have this pulled pork, this pernil, and you pull it out and it's like, and then the shell of the pork becomes this hard, almost like tree bark. That you like crack. It's almost like really so good. It's like glass jerky, but it's so fucking delicious. I can't even tell you. But you know, like empanadas were like a big thing for me. You know, tostones, which are like twice fried plantains. But that's like
I like plantains.
Yeah,
dude, yeah. You'd love tostones, I think. But yeah, that's the stuff I grew up with. But like, I didn't like Mexican food really because I grew up on the East Coast, and the Mexican food over there just kind of sucked. Like I didn't get Mexican food until I came out here and I had like a burrito at like some random stand and I was like, oh my God, this is so much better than any of the stuff I was eating. It's almost a shame what's going on everywhere else. So I definitely agree with Colin on that front, but I don't know. I've never really been that adventurous as far as that. Like when I was with Lacey, like she really pulled me out of my shell with like a lot of food stuff. She would take me to all these like places. Like I never really had sushi before that either. And because I was just like, I had a really hard stance on seafood. Like I was like, no. Comes out of the ocean. I don't respect it. I'm not going to eat it. And then I would have sushi. And for the longest time, I thought sushi only came in rolls. Like I always
California roll.
Yeah, I really always thought it was like, okay, it's like the seaweed roll with like the little bit of rice, the shitty imitation crab, the fucking random, I don't know, avocado or cucumber that they shove in there, and then like a little piece of fish. And I remember I would have it at like I would go out with friends and I would have it and I was like, this fucking, I don't know, man, this sucks. Like I'm not into this at all. And then I went to like a real sushi place out here where you could just it was just the rice and the fish and like you get your soy sauce and your different things. And I was like, oh, this is so much better. Like I still to this day don't really like sushi rolls. I don't like the reliance on imitation crab and throwing random like cucumber and all that shit in there. But like real sushi, just like the rice with the fish on it, delicious. Like I could eat that in the morning, at night, like 2 a.m. I don't care. Eat that at any moment in the day. But Italian food is obviously like huge for me because New York is just big on that in general. I love me a calzone, although I don't know if that's even really authentic Italian. I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I think everything's kind of an adopt. Like it's been adapted from like Italian food. Like we were talking about pizza, but our pizza is so much better. You know.
That's what they say.
Yeah. I have to. I do want to. Like I really want to take a trip to Italy to have like authentic Italian pizza because I think it would be delicious. I still think I would probably prefer like a New York slice, but I feel like I don't know, man. It's got to be amazing, you know, at least in some way, even if it doesn't fulfill the role of like what we would assume pizza is. It's kind of like how like those not those microwave, but like those toaster oven pizzas kind of taste good, even though they're not.
Yeah,
sure. It's not really pizza, you know.
Every once in a while, like a frozen pizza or something will hit the spot for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. This reminds me. This kind of relates in that. So we have foreign food that we've bastardized in one way or another here in the U.S. In Japan, I would notice there would be certain American style things that were always about 85% of the way there. But then they would do something that was quintessentially not American or strange or whatever.
Pizza is a big example of that right there.
What's that?
Pizza, I was going to say pizza is a big example of that there.
I've heard that. I didn't see.
They put mayo on pizza and like corn and stuff like that.
Raw chicken is big on pizza, I think, there.
What the fuck are you talking about? Is that real? Are you serious?
I'm 90% sure that's true. Raw chicken.
I'm sorry. That made me so mad when you said that. Like, it's so viscerally angry to hear that.
I know they definitely eat raw chicken in Japan. I'm pretty sure I've heard about it being on pizza before. Someone will have to let me know. One of our Japan listeners. But
What?
Yeah, go on. I interrupted.
When I was at the, and this is related, but I'm not trying to shoehorn this in. When I was at the One Piece Cafe at Universal, I got the Frankie's American chicken because the one character Frankie is supposed to be American or whatever. And it was this nice chicken wing leg thing. It's like, this looks good. It's got barbecue sauce on it. And what is that, mustard on there? I thought, oh no. And then so I touch it with my finger, and no, it's cheese on this chicken leg. So it's just coated in barbecue sauce and then like lines of cheese on it.
No.
I thought, that's exactly how we do the American chicken around here, is with the cheese on top. So I'm curious what other stuff there is that, like if you're in Germany, and like, oh, we have American hot dogs, but they're, there's something different about it. We put, I guess mayo, that wouldn't be too weird.
Well, a German American hot dog would probably be fucking dope because it's like, German sausage.
That actually would make sense.
Yeah.
It would be like
sausage.
or whatever.
It'd actually be fucking delicious.
There's a place near my house called Fest. That's that my brother-in-law and I went to, got drunk there, and then they served the German food or whatever. And there's some good stuff there. Although when I was in Germany, honestly, there was a Pizza Hut right around the corner from where I was staying once, and I was just going over there like once a day.
Nice. Dagan, I want to know your thoughts, but I first have to ask, do you remember the arc of Sopranos, the very strange arc where Tony gets super into sushi and gets fat?
Him and Carmela, yeah, they're eating like the $50 a piece.
It's so
sushi.
random in there. They're just like, oh, Tony's into sushi now.
It's so weird that you bring that up because it really is a random arc.
Yeah.
Right. And and they're just kind of playing up at that point, because I think at the same time, Carmela is kind of stressing about something's going to happen to Tony and leave her with nothing or not enough. And at the same time, they're kind of stressing the point of how much money they have. So they're going out for these $500 a night sushi meals, and they're addicted, and that's all they could think about.
He's eating it with his hands, he's picking up, like, it's just barbaric. It's awesome.
That is really a random arc. It's so funny. It's interesting about sushi though, what you guys say. And like, I love sushi, traditional sushi. I really, the older I get, I never had it until I moved to LA for the first time. I was probably, how old was I back then? 22 or something like that. And somebody took me to a sushi restaurant. I was living in Westwood at the time. And, it was the first time I had it. And I started with the California roll. I started low and I worked my way up to like the salmon nigiri and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And when I came home, as you guys said, Manhattan has really good sushi spots, so I enjoyed it. But I also realized how some of it's just so Americanized and obnoxious. Like you could get the roll. I know out here we have the Philadelphia roll, which is like the imitation crab, the avocado with Philly cream cheese, and then they put sauces. It's like just taking it and it's like the cheese on the chicken. It's like it has to be a little more elegant. Dial it back. We just want the fish, the rice, right? It's all about the preparation. I remember it's interesting to hear your experiences in Japan, Dust, because I've always wanted to go, and I remember long being smitten by this fantasy of there's no bad sushi in Japan. Mm-hmm. And then at a certain point realizing, well, that's kind of like thinking you can't get a bad cheeseburger in the United States. But it's kind of cool to hear that maybe there is a little something, at least like if you're thinking about Tokyo and Kyoto and all that.
Right.
They take their sushi very seriously. In other words, I'm sure there's bad sushi, but it's hard to find bad sushi. I like that. It's keeping the fantasy alive for me, because for such an old man, I haven't been that many places. I've been up in Canada. I've been down to the Caribbean, but I'm not well traveled. But I really do want to start, kind of venturing out and seeing places. And I think, like for me, there's no better way to discover a country than eating your way through it. Right? Mm-hmm. I think of France. I think of India. I think of China, Japan, of course, Thailand, Spain, Greece, Italy. We talked about Italy, and then divided by the north and the south and the different cuisines depending on where you're at in that country. And then like just eating in a city, like I think of New York, and I always hear from some of my Asian friends, the people from Singapore and other parts of the world, they're like, Hong Kong knocks New York on its ass. If you think New York is like the end all be all as far as 24 hours, get whatever you want, crowded nightclubs, any kind of cuisine. Hong Kong is like 10 times New York. Just hearing that is like, I want to go and experience that place. But a big part of that is the food. I would like to go to Hong Kong and just because it's probably like New York is in the fact that it's a true melting pot. So you have so many different people there, especially from that part of the world, and just kind of in this clump of like all these different cuisines. So it's very appealing to me. I mean, like what Colin said, we grew up with one thing, which was authentic Italian food, because our great grandparents and grandparents were so dialed in to the old world, the old country, that I remember as a little kid understanding like, okay, this is the type of food I know. And we would even learn little tricks along the way. Like our granny would always say like oregano is for pizza sauce. You don't put that in the pasta sauce. There were rules. And so we understood that. We understood that type of cuisine. The other thing, more so for me, Colin may remember this less, but we were very dialed in, not in ethnic cuisine, but we were very dialed into what now is like a socially acceptable regular thing, which was health food. Back in the day, in the late 70s and early 80s, our mom was allergic to everything. And back then, there was like a health food store every 40 or 50 miles. There wasn't one in every town. So like multi-grain breads and tofu and all that. I was eating that as a 6-year-old. I was born in 73. So, that we were really at the tip of the spear with like health food. That was the other cuisine that I kind of understood at an early age. But
I still remember the smell of the health food store in Bellport.
Do you remember that place?
Yeah. They had like that was the first place I ever saw made their own peanut butter and stuff like that. And it smelled like a very unique way. And I liked going in there, but I hated eating everything from it. Mom would always drag me in there to go,
because it was high quality, low ingredient food, no artificial stuff. And that was just kind of breaking in at that point. What the interesting thing is? We had the one in Bellport, which was close to home, fortunately for Mom. But our dad's now wife, Nancy, owned a health food store back then. More eastern on Long Island in the Hamptons. And that might have been the next nearest one at that time. That's how, spread out and few and far between they were. But you know what? You guys remind me of Mexican food because I love it too. And you do realize living in California, like they just got it dialed. They have the Mexican food dialed in. You could find, Chris will know this, you could find really good, authentic, sort of hole in the wall Mexican spots in New York, in Manhattan, which are like oftentimes in the back of bodegas. Yeah. There's like an old Mexican lady cooking behind a curtain, like really authentic stuff. But here's the thing I still get confused on, and maybe you guys could shed some light on this. I don't know the difference between what's considered Tex-Mex, I guess, or Americanized Mexican food and actual straight up genuine Mexican. I don't know, because I know it's a big thing. I remember going to Mexican restaurants out here and some of the waitresses would be like trying to distinguish, like, okay, that's more Tex-Mex. If you want the mole sauce, that's a little more Tex-Mex. This is a little more straight up Mexican. It always seemed to be that Mexican was just a little more dialed back in terms of ingredients and sauces and things. It was plainer, right?
But I think the difference, I always thought the difference, well, just like a difference would be like, I look at tacos as being more authentically Mexican. I look at burritos as being an American thing.
Yeah.
Like corn tortillas, Mexican, flour tortillas, American.
That's a big one.
Right. Yeah.
That's a big one. That seems like a big one.
Mole is another one that I think is like more authentically. Dude, I had a mole taco in the back of a cigar lounge in Los Angeles. Like this, my friend lives near the cigar lounge. We were like, "You want to go to cigar lounge, smoke a cigar?" I was like, "Yeah, I haven't smoked a cigar in a while." So we go there, and there's this just dude in the back cooking up like a bunch of Mexican. It's like a couple things. It's like quesadillas and burritos and all this stuff. I was like, "Yo, can I get a chicken quesadilla?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Yeah." Do you want it with mole on it? I was like, "I've never had mole. What is it?" It's like, "I'm not going to tell you what it is, but you'll like it. Trust me." I was like, okay, fine. Whatever. sounds interesting. The best Mexican food I've ever had in the back of this cigar lounge. I don't know what the fuck mole. I looked up after it and I understand why he didn't tell me what it was, because it's like this sauce with like chocolate in it or something.
Yeah, chocolate. Yeah.
So it sounds like, I feel like most people hear that and they make a decision about how they feel about it before they actually taste it. But it's so And he probably knows that too, because I'm sure a lot of people I'm sure he has a lot of experience telling people, yeah, it's this chocolate sauce, and people are like, oh no, thanks. But it's so good. Like unreal.
It is. It really is.
It's so funny you say that, Chris, because I had an opposite experience time-wise with mole, where when I was at Northeastern, there was a Qdoba on our campus, like the burrito place and like the Mexican place. And I used to go there like once or twice a week, and I went for years, and I would get a mole burrito there, like a mole chicken burrito, blah, blah, blah. And then, imagine that I ate probably, let's say 30 or 40 of them over time. Right. And then I went in with a friend of mine and I ordered it, and he's like, you don't like chocolate? And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's like, mole is chocolate. And I was like, and then I could never eat it again.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's
really?
So
but you
good.
Liked it.
Yeah, no, I did. I loved it. And then when I found out what it was in it, I was like, oh, I can't do that. I mean, that's fucking
like
weird. It's not because
not
because I tricked myself on the chocolate thing. It's that I didn't feel like chocolate belonged on what I was eating, and that was the last time. So 15 years ago, probably was the last time I had mole.
It does sound
weird. Clearly, it does. That's like the people who are like, because I remember like my aunt would always tell me this. Like whenever I would go and get like a street dog in New York, and I'd be like, don't you know what's in that? And she would tell me all the stuff that's in that, and I was like, I've already had like 40 of these in my entire life, and they're still good. I don't care what the fuck is in it, because it's whatever it is, it's good. She tell me stuff like rat carcasses or whatever. I'm like, I don't care. If it was truly bad, I would have died by now.
Yeah.
And if it was disgusting, it would have tasted bad by now.
You know,
yeah, like pig buttholes or I don't know.
It's like what I agree. It's like whatever. That doesn't bother me either. For some reason, the chocolate thing, I'll never forget that, just because that was a good example. It's very similar to other things that you guys will find funny. One is because I was very picky when I was a kid, as Dagan will remember. I used to pull the cheese off my pizza.
Yes.
And when I was like a little kid,
what is going on?
And so I would just eat the bread with the sauce or whatever. And then when I was like 6 or 7 or something, we were, dicking around and having fun, and I accidentally just ate the pizza without taking the cheese off, realized I liked it. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's how I came to like pizza. And then the second thing is that my mom puts cheese and Parmesan cheese and like a bunch of different things, but I don't like Parmesan cheese really, like as its own. And so I walked in on her making chicken cutlets. I'm not big on
Parmesan either.
Like when I was like 16 or 17, she was making chicken cutlets. Now imagine that I've eaten these chicken cutlets at that point hundreds of times. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? You putting cheese in it? Like when she was like making it, I was like walking in, she's like, I've been hiding this from you for your entire life. And then I found out she was doing it with meatballs and all the other things. She's like, dude, Parmesan cheese is in everything you eat, And I was like, oh, fair enough. So I had to kind of get over that as well. But the chocolate mole thing, couldn't get it. But my mom used to replace my goldfish when I was a kid. So I thought that the thing lived for years. And then I would go on and on about how I had this goldfish that like was fucking immortal. So she was always pulling a fast one on me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man, see, that's the kind of thing that makes me want to have kids. That like just being able to gaslight them.
The trickery.
Yeah, for
especially I'm the fourth one, the youngest one. You can kind of relate as well as being a younger child, where it's like they're kind of done with you by that point, And so I think that really turned on to like the hijinks. I think in a way,
ensued.
Right? Like in a way that was not that Dagan wasn't. Dagan experienced a much sterner dad, for instance, than I did, or like a much more serious mom than I did.
It was scary.
They were just finished by the time they got to me. They were like, whatever.
Yeah. So mellowed out. Which is weird, right? Because they smoked so much weed when I was little. I didn't know at the time, and they were completely like they went from being like straight up hippies to being like complete, really kind of. I hate to say it this way, but like. Republicans, conservative, right? But when they were hippies, they were scary. So it's a weird, it's a weird thing.
That's a bizarre thing.
They remind me of the parents in Poltergeist. Just them smoking weed in their room.
Not unlike those two. Yeah, very, very good.
This conversation's reminding me of I had a couple years, like I think maybe like 2017. I went to Portland, and I went to this restaurant. It was like a really good restaurant, but like they had this thing called like. American breakfast sushi. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And it was sushi rolls, but all the ingredients were just American breakfast food. So instead of seaweed wrap, it was like bacon with like, and the rice was like egg. And then there was like a little bit of pancake with like syrup in it.
Oh my goodness.
And it was cooking. Like, and can I tell you something? So fucking good.
Oh, I bet it was.
I know it's just
amazing.
it is just the same ingredients just mixed around. I know that's what a lot of different cuisines are. I mean, like you could argue like a lot of Mexican food is just the same, and a lot of Italian food too is the same stuff, like packaged differently, like calzones, like a pizza burrito, you know. But dude, I've been trying to.
Awesome.
I've wanted to have that again, but I don't remember. I think I went there with Lacey. I got to text her and see if like she remembers what this place was called, because I'd probably go back to Portland just for that. Just for that breakfast. It was so good.
That's just calling it. Was there rice involved?
I don't exactly remember. It was so many years ago. Maybe.
So it was just calling it sushi. It wasn't one of those things where you're messing with the purity of sushi.
It wasn't really sushi or anything. It was just the structure of sushi with the ingredients of like American breakfast, basically.
I like that.
Yeah,
that sounds nice. Go back to Portland. The thing about that though is you might get into a fist fight with Antifa when you go there. So
I'll take my chances. Yeah, I'll take my chances.
Are they running shit out there?
I don't know. It seems like a fucking racket out there, doesn't it? It's like some sort of cartel running Portland at this point.
I think it's Seattle and Portland.
Well, is there anything else to say, Dig? You were going to say something to Dustin, I think.
Oh yeah, I wanted to say to you, Dustin. I really wanted to ask you. I was genuinely curious about this. I like your sort of philosophy about trying to avoid the fast food chains and just kind of go down home and be just in Japan. But I am I've always been very curious about the geographical differences of the fast food chains in different places. And I don't know if it was Burger King or McDonald's they had the black bunned Whopper or Big Mac.
Yeah, that was in Japan. That was at Burger King. And I was with people that all went and tried it. It was squid ink. Yeah. And
that's what it is?
Right. And I was with all of them. We've recorded it. So it's probably on IGN. There's probably a video about it from when we were there, but I refused to eat it. I was like, no, I'll have a regular Whopper. Thanks.
Just the look of that thing.
Dude, some of them were just like, no, you can't do it. By the way, did you go to Moss Burger when you were there?
No, I did see them though.
Yeah, that's like their Americanized, homegrown burger place.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So, Dag, to my understanding, there are special menu items like, you mentioned the squid ink burger bun and stuff. I think there's a burger at McDonald's Japan called the Shogun Burger, and it has like teriyaki sauce on it or something like that.
Oh, interesting.
And that was appealing to me because I thought I wasn't totally opposed to going to McDonald's. If I was in a pinch, I was thinking about it, but we decided that we did want to do a few chain meals, but we decided to make them Japanese chains. So one of them is this place called Coco something, but they serve curry. And so it's just a chain place in Japan. Apparently Japanese people don't think it's that great, but foreigners that go and eat there love it. And I was one of them because I got this amazing plate of curry with the katsu chicken on top. It was maybe $7 and it's totally stuffed me. It was amazing. Very, very good. Went to a chain ramen place that was also, it wasn't the best ramen I had in Japan because I went to much, much smaller places too that were way better, but it was really good. And then, so yeah, I getting a mix. That was the thing that when people, before I went, there's all these people like, you got to go to this place. You got to go to this fancy restaurant. This one's a little expensive, but it's amazing. And when I was there, I quickly realized that pretty much everywhere I was eating was amazing with very few exceptions, just because I like a lot of Japanese food. And so because I'm there and it's more authentic, even if it is way cheaper, dude, one of the best things I ate there is from 7-Eleven. It was a fried curry bun, which is basically kind of like it's a donut filled with Japanese curry, which maybe would sound gross, like a savory donut to our American tastes, but
sounds good.
It cost, I don't know, $1.50. And it was legitimately one of the best things I ate in Japan. Straight up. It was amazing. And I just love curry overall, but it's great going and just being able to, it's so, I've had Japanese food here, but obviously when you're in the land where it's actually, it's always going to be better.
Yeah, it's definitely, I definitely want to go sometime soon. I think in the next year,
LSM
I'll try
trip,
and...
let's LSM live in Japan.
Yeah, right.
All the
live in Japan. Yeah. I think it'd be good. Yeah, I don't know, man. I want to. Yeah. Oh, shout out to since you mentioned curry, shout out to Indian food too. I don't.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of. I like. I don't know, chicken tiki masala. I know it's like a really standard ass fucking thing, but like I really love chicken. And garlic naan is very dangerous. Like garlic naan is a very dangerous bread for me because
naan's legit.
I will eat garlic naan until I am like legitimately on the verge of death. Probably. It's so good.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It is. Bread, just generally bread product. You know, from the tortilla to the naan, and even just grain like rice. You were talking about rice. I love rice, dude. I would eat rice so much if it wasn't going to make me, turn into a fatso. I don't want to.
Dude, I love plain white rice. I love it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. We buy 25-pound bags of it and go through it in like 2 seconds.
I remember I would like whenever I would be at like a Korean barbecue or like I don't know, like places that will give you like bowls of rice. I would get like 3, and people were like, "Why are you getting so much rice?" I was like, "It's good." What do you mean? Like, why do you get a lot of anything at a food place? It's because it's delicious.
Exactly. Agreed. Yeah, rice is special, man. It's just carbs, like wheat-based things, bread, rolls, pasta, rice, like all that shit. Just give it all to me.
It's so good.
Rice very integral to a lot of Puerto Rican food too.
Oh, I bet.
Very.
Yeah. You know what's a good way to use rice in Italian is rice balls. Like if you fry them or whatever. Oh my god, with a little cheese and it'll spice up the rice.
There's some sushi places too where you get the crispy rice.
Oh yeah, dude. There's a place. What is the place? Yeah, there's a place I go here, Taza, that serves the crispy rice in like a ceramic plate that I guess comes out of the oven or whatever, and then it's got, I don't know, peppers in it or something, and it's awesome. It's super good. Like you're chewing on your rice basically, and it's a little crunchy. I like it.
Fried rice. Come on.
Fried rice, of course.
Oh, fried rice is great, dude. This is making me so hungry, this topic.
Yeah, we shouldn't have done this one. We shouldn't have done this first.
Yeah, last one.
Oh, man.
Well, because I was expecting to be like, oh, I don't want any foreign food. But then we went on and on about how good it all was. Dustin, are you satisfied?
I am 100% satisfied. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. All right. Chris, let's go to you. I'm really interested to see what you have to say about this, and especially how Dagan has thoughts on this as well. As we say on the show sometimes, invoking AM radio, tri-state, sports talk radio. I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah. So I wanted and this is a topic that I really thought of last night as I was going through like a lot of the stuff that I'd missed throughout the week, some of the news and some of the stuff that's been announced as far as like a lot of the video game transmedia stuff like a new Tomb Raider animated series that's very serious and very dark, and Castlevania getting its 2nd season, and I think Devil May Cry getting another season. And I'm seeing all this stuff and I'm like, wow, and Scott Pilgrim coming back in the way that it is. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's kind of fascinating that adult animation is kind of transitioning into like what I would call like American anime, really, because traditional adult animation for a long time was, kind of Simpsons style, like raunchy comedies, even up until recently, like even up until like the late 2010s, where, you had like Big Mouth and Paradise PD and all these like just like really simplistically animated shows that were meant to be comedies and meant to be like kind of edgy. Obviously South Park's huge in that as well. And so to see it kind of transition into like, we're getting American animated series that are very, very modeled after anime. And granted, they're based on a lot of Japanese properties, obviously Castlevania and I feel like Devil May Cry is obviously Japanese.
Yeah, no, it is. It was supposed to be Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
And Animusha is another one as well.
Yeah. And so like, it's obviously still rooted in Japanese culture in some way, but like, man, it's just kind of fascinating that we're entering this era of like American anime. I just thought that was interesting. Like, and it didn't really cross my mind before. Because we would get like smatterings of it. We would get like, Castlevania, was like kind of the only thing that was happening in that way for a while. But now we're getting like a glut of them, and I don't know. I'm curious to pick all of our brains about it and like how we feel about this new trend because it's clearly like anime inspired. Like to a point where it's like the lines are getting blurred in a way where it's like, this is American anime because it's not a cartoon. I wouldn't call I wouldn't call Castlevania a cartoon, but it's also not Japanese, so it's not an anime, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't know. It's interesting, and I definitely wanted to bring this up because obviously Dagan is big animation guy. So yeah, I don't know. I guess we could just I'll leave it to everybody else, but I'm just curious how we all feel about it and whether or not we have anything to say about it.
Dig, I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this. I'm not going to have anything valuable to say about this probably, other than it reminds me a little bit of the JRPG conundrum that we're dealing with in Lilymo, especially as we get ready next year to hopefully launch our JRPG. And I keep calling it a JRPG because it is, but we're not Japanese. And so, Sea of Stars, for instance, is a good example of a game recently that's very Japanese, but it's not. But other than that, I'm wondering if you've noticed this as well, Dig.
Yeah, I love this topic. Yeah, thanks for this, Chris. I mean, you're opening a can of worms. You guys are going to have to shut me up at a certain point. But, for such an old man and such an old animation guy, just like an animation mark dating back to when I was just a kid, I think the sentiment that comes to mind the quickest is like, what took so long? Because, I fell in love and recognized Japanese animation. I guess I kind of was always dialed into that mindset as a little kid, and I identified distinctly Japanese stuff, cartoons, as a little one, like 6-7 years old, before it was called anime. I mean, we just called it, animation made in Japan. And then later on in the late 80s, the Jap animation thing, unfortunately, became, a label for a little while that's hard to live down. But, I remember being a little kid, and not just with, I think it started with Japanese animation. It started with me of the stuff that they brought over, the early stuff that they brought over from the East for American television. Things like Robotech and Gotcha Man and Star Blazers and Captain Harlock and stuff. And the stuff that they did on early Nickelodeon, they brought over like Belle and Sebastian and Anne of Green Gables and really weird stuff. But it was less about the story sometimes and just a really recognizable art style. It's a very distinctive visual flavor to it. And I think a higher quality in terms of the movement, just a more thoughtful, definitely stylized and graphic, but, more thoughtful, and just a real distinction between American animation offerings, and just recognizing that as a kid. And not just in the TV stuff. I think back to like the early pioneer Japanese animation studios that did American television, like TMS and Toei and Pacific. Mm-hmm. And we would especially see their calling cards in the opening segments of these shows. So like the intro to G.I. Joe, the intro to Thundercats, it was like, wow, something weird is going on here. This is not getting done here. This is something that's being done in Japan. And sort of the rise of Japan as an animation entity and becoming sort of so big over time, I guess from the late 80s into the early 90s, where it was like they were pricing themselves out of subcontracting for American production companies. That now it was going over to the Philippines and South Korea and Taiwan and Mexico to some degree for service work. And Japan was becoming a proper player and just creating their own things. And that dovetailed with just the rise of anime and manga, I think, in the West. I say in the United States, but it was really across Europe and sort of the Western world too, and just the popularity. But you know what the interesting thing is, Chris? There was adult animation dating all the way back in the West, in the United States, say North America, dating all the way back to the 70s. Mm. I mean, I remember things, it was mostly reserved for theatrical sort of properties at that time, but I remember things like Heavy Metal, Watership Down, Ralph Bakshi, and Rankin and Bass both took stabs at Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Again, mostly reserved for theatrical feature-length things, but there were definitely efforts to do, what was considered adult animation. Again, less so for television, but that sort of was another thing where it maintained a cult following, but it never really caught on to a large degree in our world, in the West, in the United States and North America. So it was interesting to see. And, and then later on it did in the early 90s. I remember MTV had the Max animated series based on the Image comic book.
Yeah.
They did Spawn, right? So
I forgot. I totally forgot about the Max.
Right? There were things, and there were some of these things were beautifully done, but again, they never really caught on to the mainstream. They just remain, kind of like maintained cult followings. And then I think really what happened was two things: the rise of popularity in manga and anime, and then the subscription services kind of ushered in this whole new era of just creating animation for everybody. So plenty of kids stuff from preschool on up. And then of course, adult animation was a big part of that too, you know, and it was just, it's interesting. Like we talk about gatekeeping a lot on the show and elitism and all that kind of stuff. But I remember a time I think this Western anime thing is the part of this conversation that fascinates me the most, because I remember a time when I started collecting manga and stuff, like let's say the mid to late 80s. And I started really getting into OVA anime, which was like, you know, direct to VHS, Japanese language only, no sub, no dub, very small fan communities in North America. And you had to go to comic book conventions to a small little back room to get this stuff from basically off the black market, you know, from people that were pirating it and bringing it over from Japan. It was very niche. And I remember thinking at that time, there were things in America, like I think of Antarctic Press's Ninja High School by Ben Dunn, and other sort of early entries, people in the Western world delving into manga and anime. And I remember thinking, nope, I don't want to see it if it's from you. I could tell the difference. You know, there was definite gatekeeping, and like, I only want things authentically from Japan. And I think Castlevania is the thing. It really, in all fairness, this conversation really starts with Avatar, Nickelodeon's Avatar, because I think that was
the first cartoon that I remember feeling like, what is this?
Yeah.
Where I was like, I wasn't sure, because it definitely didn't feel quite like a cartoon, but it wasn't quite an anime either. Like there was certain expressiveness where like I always distinguished between them based on like how the mouths were animated. Where like if it was just like the same kind of open and close, it was like, oh, that's anime. But if it was like a little bit more led by syllabic, like the actual like syllables that people were saying, it's like, oh, that's a cartoon. I don't know why, but Avatar was kind of both. Like Avatar was like really deeply animated. It looked really good, but it also had like more Western kind of like proper lip sync, you know? And so I was like,
that's a great point.
And so I was like, granted, that's obviously because they didn't have to translate to like a million different to American from Japanese, but like at the same time, it's like, wow, that was the first time that I did remember feeling like, I don't know what this is exactly, but that was unique in and of itself. Like Avatar stood out specifically because it was the only thing that was out at the time that was even really like that. I guess you could argue like something like Teen Titans was also somewhat similar, maybe a little bit less so, but like definitely like it definitely started happening around that time, and then it stopped. Like it didn't have, like you got like Legend of Korra after, but like there really wasn't anything like Teen Titans and Avatar after Teen Titans and Avatar. And what you bring up about the subscription services is interesting because it almost makes you wonder. It's like, yeah, we get a lot of shovelware on subscription services now to feed the subscription beast because it needs content to survive. And so that's why you get stuff. I'm convinced that's why you get shit like Big Mouth and why it has 7 seasons. Like Big Mouth is terrible, but it has 7 seasons and it's like an adult animation and like Paradise PD and all these like kind of like obvious Family Guy ripoffs or like Simpsons ripoffs. And so it almost makes you wonder, like you're getting a lot of these new Western anime out of Netflix now. And it's kind of crazy because you almost wonder, would this happen if it weren't for subscription? Like if you didn't have Netflix at all, would there even be a Western anime boom at all right now?
Yeah. It's a great point. I mean, listen, I think the subscription services are interesting, especially one as big as Netflix, because there seems to be a philosophy in balancing the things we're going to sort of go out and get versus the things we're going to create in-house. And we have to have a certain percentage of both things. So we're going to acquire stuff and we're going to create things.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of things. We have a lot of spots to fill. We want a lot of eyeballs. So we're going to put out the money in order to create these things. And some are high profile things by high profile, you know, sort of creators, and some are lower end sort of B class filler content. But there's sort of a need for everything. I think Avatar is definitely where it started, where that, as you said, Chris, like that line was being blurred between Western and Eastern sensibilities, and a higher quality, and you know, sort of on Nickelodeon, so high exposure pre-subscription service, which was a big thing. And then I think Castlevania is an interesting one because I think it was just the perfect property because it was something that was known, but something that was also kind of waning in relevance. Like Castlevania, a lot of people knew cross-generationally, but it was sort of out of the public. They weren't creating games. You know, it was kind of an old school thing.
Yeah.
And they said, let's take a chance with this. It's not high stakes like Superman, where people are going to, you know, we're taking a huge risk with something that's universally, eternally beloved. We'll take something known like Castlevania, but if we fuck it up, it's not going to have that much of an impact. And they just kind of really did an amazing job with it. And I think it has a lot to do with just embodying the quality of anime, not just the visual flavor and the way it looks, but the quality of the movement, the quality of the stories being very cinematic with saying, you know, we could fast action, we could show this from any angle. Let's really get into the storyboarding and really make it sophisticated and make it very graphic and, you know, play up the effects and do it hand drawn. I never thought that Western anime would be a thing. You know, if we talk about Castlevania, it's interesting. It's created by Powerhouse, who were based in Austin. Yeah. I mean, you would think it's the closest thing that I've ever seen with some anomalies. I mean, I have to shout out Passion Pictures in England and also The Line Animation Studio, I think also in London, and maybe some stuff going on in Spain, which are mostly commercial houses. But besides those things, I would mostly say Powerhouse is the one person where I think sometimes it's hard to tell that it's not done in Japan. They really inherently are connected with what makes a proper anime visually, the movement, the story, everything, and also bringing their own imprint into it, you know, and putting a Western. We used to think a Western sensibility was kind of a dark mark against wannabe manga or anime, but they're actually playing up sort of their own proprietary end and making it, putting their own imprint on it in a good way.
It's very Western too. That's the thing it's about. It's like it's very anime, but it's also like, I don't know, there's a lot of tropes in anime that I'm a big fan. I'm a big like Dragon Ball and like Yu Yu Hakusho and like those kinds of specific ones. But you know, there's definitely like some tropes in anime that like are very Japanese. It's like the you know, the big eyes and like the specific, like, you know, the exaggerated animation, and even just the way that conversation flows is very, you know, even when it's translated is very much, you know, of that sensibility. And what's so interesting is that like the Western sensibility of Castlevania is like it's so much more subdued and like it's I don't know, it's really, it's fascinating what they've been able to do, because it blurs the line, insane. But it's so clearly Western, but it's also like it does blur that line still, and it's fascinating. Avatar, I remember borrowed a lot of like Japanese sensibilities as far as like even just like the expressiveness of certain characters. Like whenever there was like an expression of surprise, the characters would get big headed and they would, you know, they would do the loud obnoxious screaming. But like Castlevania is so subdued in comparison. It's like, it's almost like not Game of Thrones exactly, because it's a bad point of comparison because I've never really seen Game of Thrones, but like, you know, just like it's a lot more like an adult TV drama in the way that it's acted sometimes. And
yeah, they go less cartoony with it, less chibi. Like you think of things chibi, like Akira or Ghost in the Shell, Ninja Scroll, things that maintain a certain realism and don't break that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is a different style of anime, which, like you said, Avatar was the opposite of that. They went a little more cartoony. They were a little more loose with it, a little less serious. It's interesting too, Chris. I think your generation in the Western world, all the way up through, I would say, Colin's generation, those artists and would-be animators that grew up to be like the animation class right now, the people that are professionally animating these things. It sounds funny, but I know a lot of older animators like myself definitely think that the advent of DVDs and freeze framing anime really taught your guys' generation how to animate this shit, because there was really no way
for sure
of knowing it in my generation rather than memorizing it as it was playing out. You know, I think two things. I think what I just said about DVDs and freeze framing and really observing this stuff and really learning how to do it on a frame by frame basis, but also the fact that it had been around long enough, you know, by that time that you guys actually grew up with it, where a lot of Gen Xers like myself, we really didn't grow up with it. You know, we had to learn. I mean, there was literally one, I don't know if he's American or Canadian, but there was one Japanese, he wasn't even an animator, he was an illustrator. I think he's still around, named Robert DeJesus. And he did some of the cover illustration for some of the then American and Canadian anime fandom magazines. He was like the only guy, literally, back then who wasn't Japanese, or at least Asian. I include South Korea, especially with Avatar and JM Animation and people that did all that stuff. Because that was a problem. South Korea came right out of Japan with their anime training. But he was the only guy that I would look at his stuff and be like, that's the only guy's work that I recognize as a proper manga artist that doesn't have Japanese blood. You know, now it's like these kids are really inherently not only gifted artists in their own right, but they're just really, really dialed into this art style that they do it as well as a lot of Japanese artists do.
Yeah.
Well, Dagan, this is kind of what I was thinking as far as, you know, we're seeing this rise in American anime, and I would expect that this is the tip of the iceberg right now. Because think about Chris and I's generation, we were the first ones to grow up where it wasn't that anime was fully accessible like it is now, but it was presented to us directly on television through Cartoon Network or you know, Toonami with Dragon Ball Z, and Chris mentioned Yu Yu Hakusho, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon. All these things were directly presented to us, and
Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, you have, you know, Dagan's. I don't know. It feels. I guess you are the generation before, but you know, right before us, there was some of that seeping in, but it was really hard to access. And then you have Chris and I's generation that it was directly presented before us. And so now Chris and I are hitting our 30s and are starting to work our way up in the ladder in these different creative studios and pitching ideas that are going to be directly correlating more like anime. And I think it's only going to get more exponentially for two additional reasons too. That number one, anime is huge here. Japanese anime is huge here in the US. So executives that may not be fully in the know at least understand the dollar signs to making that type of animation. And second, kids now have such easy access to anime that we would have drooled over in that time. I was telling Holly this because I've been reading manga on the Shonen Jump app, and this also applies like Crunchyroll, right? Shonen Jump app is $3 a month, and you can read everything on it. Pretty much everything. All the Shonen Jump stuff. You can read One Piece, you can read Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, all new stuff. They update it with new chapters, and it's $3 a month.
That's
insane. When I was growing up and I wanted to read Full Metal Alchemist, it was $8 per book. And he just gave up because he just didn't have money to do it. So you hope that maybe you could get one from a library or something like that. You read maybe a bootleg on the internet. And then you mentioned VHS tapes too. Like beg your parents to get the Dragon Ball Z tape or movie or something. But
dude, I had so many Dragon Ball Z VHS tapes. It's insane.
Yeah,
they were expensive.
That was the best you could do.
Yeah,
but now, whether it's the Shonen Jump app or Crunchyroll for $8 a month, or I think it's even less than $8. You can get the lowest tier for really cheap. You have access to all this stuff, and immediately when a new episode comes out in Japan, it's here in the US at the same time. It's amazing. So between anime being popular here, executives seeing dollar signs, kids coming up with even more access, and I think that this is awesome. Even though I'm not really into these American animes, to say I watched Castlevania, I thought that was cool. But there's a lot of different stuff out there now. Even like there's that Masters of the Universe show, which is a much more serious He-Man take. My dad watched some of that when he was here a few weeks ago. Or
that's Kevin Smith's series, right? He's running that show.
I'm not sure. Oh yeah. It is Kevin Smith. You're right.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of it out there and gaining popularity and gaining in quality too. And this pleases me as a Japanese anime fan, because Japanese anime is getting so stale and formulaic that I'm seeing so much more creativity now it's ironic how that works from Western stuff, that I hope that this stuff gains traction in Japan and inspires them to be like, we don't need to make another I woke up in a fantasy world type anime isekai.
Yeah.
You know,
my God, yeah.
We don't need another isekai with a slight variation. We don't need to do the shows in the exact same animation style every season. Let's change it up. Let's do, and of course there are stuff that shines through right now, like Jujutsu Kaisen is the latest hotness in terms of Shonen Jump, and it seems to be pretty unique. I haven't watched too much of it, and Spy Family is also huge and really cute and funny. So there is diamonds in the rough, I would say, but I want American and that's coming from an anime fan. I hate like so much modern anime. I think is terrible because it just, like I said, so formulaic. And so when you see stuff that is different coming from the West, I'm like, yeah, awesome. Let's get some competition. Let's show the Japanese side that we don't have to do things the exact same way.
You know what's funny about isekai is that like is that it's like stale in Japanese anime, and it's literally how so many modern video game like film adaptations work. Like Sonic was like, oh, what if Sonic was in the real world? Or like oh, what if Mario was in New York City? Or like, oh man, what is it? Oh my God. There was like the Monster Hunter movie. Do you remember that movie?
Oh, no. I didn't see it.
Where like the U.S. military wakes up in Monster Hunter world.
It's like the fish out of water thing. It's just like, how can we take this and put it there?
Yeah, but like, holy shit, calm down.
Well,
I don't know.
Let me ask this real quick.
Yeah.
What do the Japanese think of our Western inspired or their Japanese inspired products? I would be very curious about that. Dagan and I joke about how sometimes, and we've actually joked about it too, Chris, is there like
Japanese American weeb?
Right,
like
exactly. The Japanese American nerd, the exact opposite of the otaku in the United States or whatever. The guy
like really
who loves
into Die
Family Guy
Hard
and The Simpsons and South Park, and he's a fucking and he eats cheeseburgers and he wants to travel to LA and.
You haven't seen The Thing?
Yeah, exactly. Like that sort of thing. But I wonder, because I wonder what they think of things like Castlevania, obviously not the game in the series, which is very Japanese, but just the Western interpretation of it, which has actually popularized it in a way that is unthinkable. Like when I have Netflix on and I see the Castlevania pop up as one of the screen saving, I'm like, that's crazy because this is happening in like some 75-year-old's house and some 10-year-old's house and my dad's house. They're seeing Castlevania, this thing I've loved. That's been westernized. And I think about Ghost of Tsushima, which a lot of people busted balls about that game, I think unreasonably so, and the Japanese love it. In fact, I think in Tsushima, they have like a Ghost of Tsushima day now or something like that. Like they love it. And that had nothing to do with Japanese development, really. I mean, Sony's a Japanese company, but Sucker Punch obviously in Washington. So Dave, do you have any idea how, or Dustin or anyone have any idea what they think of some of the American inspired products? Like I'm curious how did Sea of Stars score in Famitsu? I'm going to look now while I ask.
I do know that there is definitely a fascination, or not fascination isn't the right word, but there are fans of a lot of American, like popular American culture as far as Marvel, Pixar, Disney in particular, like Disney cartoons and, Pixar stuff. That's all really, really big in Japan. I'm not sure about some of these, I guess, smaller per se things like the stuff we're talking about. Like, I don't know how they feel about Castlevania. I didn't see any Avatar stuff when I was there, but Japan moves on really quickly from anime. In fact, finding stuff from anime that's no longer running, you have to go to specific used stores to find it. So I guess that's kind of similar to here. It's like you're not going to find very much Rugrats merchandise at a Target. So you'd have to go somewhere specific. So I'm not sure. I'll have to, I have a lot of connections now to some of our listeners that live in Japan and have for many years.
Dustin.
So
that's so cool.
I'll have to ask what they think of
Sea of Stars, by the way, got 9897 for 33 on.
Oh, wow. See, that's the thing. Like, it's not just about universally. I'm talking about globally, right? It's not just about the intelligentsia or anything. It's just about savvy pop culture people or just people that are inherently connected to what's good entertainment, right? Like good is good. No one's going to be biased against something because it's Japanese or because it's North American. Quality transcends all that shit. You know, it is an interesting thing about, I mean, I don't know currently the state of the Japanese people's tastes as far as entertainment from other places, but it is interesting to think that anime and manga, I mean, listen, this is a complicated conversation, but obviously art, obviously, but also cartooning, comic strips, animation, that dates back to different eras in places like Europe, China, Soviet Union, Japan. They have their own sort of evolution and beginnings with all that thing. But in Japan specifically, they were largely influenced by early American animation, like Disney, like Fleischer, like Snow White, like Betty Boop, and the early manga and, you know, mangaka and anime pioneers like Osamu Tezuka came directly out of the Disney tradition and the Fleischer tradition, you know, the Hollywood studios and the New York studios, and, you know, out of the Inkwell and Coco the Clown and all that kind of thing. They, you know, that anime really kind of directly sprung from American and then went its own way. So it is interesting to see it flip back. I talk about this a lot. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this, but I recognize that anime had really arrived, right? And obviously it's been growing in popularity here over the last couple of decades. We see it in fandom. We see it with cosplay. We see it with the not comic book, but actual proper anime conventions in North America, right? But I knew it had really arrived when Disney put out their Visions series. And they were, you know, this is an animation studio hiring other animation studios and just basically like create what you want and we're going to make an anthology. And when Disney did that, and I don't know if you had to be an animator inherently to be connected to this idea, but that was a huge thing. You know, for Disney to say, we're an animation studio. We're going to hire these animation studios, whether it's Madhouse or Production IG or Bones or any of these players in modern anime, and just create some Star Wars shit. You know, that was like the idea of that, whether you like what came out in the first couple of seasons or not, really excited me. And again, it was that thing of like, what took so long? Because that's a huge part of this conversation is the fact that I think with the inception and the huge, you know, the hugeness of nerd culture in our country now and how important it, you know, nerd culture, you know, basically took over pop culture, right? It's like a whole nother thing now. It's arrived, right? It's not embarrassing to be a comic book nerd anymore. But there were 50-year-old businessmen reading manga on the train out in the open in the 60s. You know what I mean? It wasn't a thing like publicly. You didn't have to grow out of reading comic books. You didn't have to grow out of watching watching animation and cartoons and anime series and superheroes and psionic girl shit and sci-fi. You didn't have to hide that. It was culturally acceptable in Japan to be into that stuff and be a dad and be a businessman, you know, and be a salaryman and be a wife and ride the subway. So that's a relatively new thing here. You know, when I was starting out in animation in the early 2000s, I was still embarrassed to read comic books on the train, you know? So that's another thing. It's like a cultural embrace now where it's like, not only is it monetarily feasible and lucrative for these companies, but you're actually stupid if you're not doing it. You know, you're leaving a lot of money on the table not getting involved in this stuff. It's absolutely incredible. For me, it's as an animator and somebody with a really discerning eye saying like, okay, I think with people like Powerhouse Animation in Texas, you know, it's arrived. You can't deny it. And just in terms of quality, it's pretty incredible. I thought that one thing that we're missing, and I'm a purist, you know, we don't have the traditional hand-drawn, cell animated era is over. Yeah. It's over for big business. And I thought that anime would never, especially manga to some degree, but especially anime would never transcend or leave the borders of Japan because of that. But with the advent of the computer and doing hand-drawn animation frame by frame, 24, 30 frames a second, whatever, on the computer, it's basically not only replaced cell animation, you're not getting that tactile old school fuzz, right? But it so much better. Now everything, the ink, the paint, the design, the camera, it's all right here. The editing, it's all right here. It's in this box. You know what I mean? So if you just kind of learn how to do it and you take it over to the digital, it's a gimme. So it's an exciting time. I mean, really, we had a rough year in animation. I'm in that same thing again, where the same exact pattern, like 2008 to 2010, where it was just this down cycle and this reset, where it was like the only thing left right now. A lot had to do with knee-jerk reaction to what the economy was supposed to be, the writer's strike. But I'm working in advertising again, doing commercials. This is exactly what happened when it dissolved about 15 years ago. It was like advertising in Madison Avenue and those high, the high revenue stream was the last man standing while everything else reset. This'll die. We'll be out of work for a few months. And I think 2024 is going to be, I predict it's going to be pretty big for animation. It's exciting. As a fan too, you don't have to be an animator to appreciate that. If you like animation and anime, there's a lot to look forward to.
Dagan, you mentioned about not growing out of anime in Japan. I noticed this firsthand. I saw a very, very, and I don't mean this in a mean way, very plain looking Japanese man, a salary man in the shirt and tie, tucked in at the restaurant we were at, and he had a bag and he had Spy Family keychains on the bag. And I thought that would be so weird if we saw that here. Obviously, there's many guys like us that have.
Meanwhile, I was on the train in San Francisco playing Monster Monpiece on my Vita, rubbing the anime girl's titties with on the touch screen.
Good
for everyone.
Yeah, I saw lots of people reading anime or manga on their phone of all ages on the train everywhere.
I love that.
Just reading it. It was great.
There's a picture of me playing Vita on the Japanese subway, just because I was like, I got to get a picture of that, because it was just like everyone in their row doing all their own thing. A couple people playing Vita, a lot of at that time 3DSs.
I didn't see any of that.
Yeah,
which is weird. I expected people to see people playing Switch on the train, and nope, just phones.
This is a great disappointment to you.
This might be different for Travis because he's so young, your dad. But think about it this way, from a generational perspective, just in terms of like growing up in our country. And Chris is, me and Colin and Chris represent pretty much 3 different generations. If you just look at the 3 of us, our dads, probably maybe Chris's dad's generation, but for the most part, generally weren't, when I was a kid, my dad wasn't watching animation except for like, oh, Foghorn Leghorn, he's hilarious, or reading comic books. So they weren't modeling those behaviors, right? The Japanese kids, our age, all our ages, their dads grew up watching animation, reading comic books, reading manga on the train. They modeled that behavior. It was handed down from generation to generation. We're pretty much the first generations generally of nerd culture where we live. So it's a new thing. It's still, like you were saying, Dust, I think the same thing. It's like still a little bit, it definitely catches your eye if somebody's unapologetically reading a comic book or some manga on the train. We're still in that phase of it becoming socially acceptable, I guess, in some degree, not to be too hyperbolic, but to some degree, not growing up and admitting that, where it's okay, like that I'm not reading the sports page. I could read the Dark Knight, I could read One Piece, whatever. I don't have to be a kid. It doesn't have to expire. I don't have to hand in my toys when I was in 6th grade, like I had to, reluctantly saying like, okay, I know it's about girls and clothes and sports now. I have to kind of cash in.
In 6th grade for me, it was all about, can I find enough stormtroopers to troop build? Because they're so rare.
You're a generation, dude. You're the first generation to get it right.
Oh,
the Gen Xers.
I didn't give a fuck. I was such a nerd. I think I went to my first day of 9th grade in a Darth Maul shirt, if I remember correctly. And that was before it was before the movie came out, because it came out the next spring. So it was like getting all your early merch. That was probably for like an 8-year-old. I was like, I'm gonna wear this shit. Chris, how do you feel about the topic? I mean,
I'm pretty.
Are you satiated?
I'm satiated.
All right,
it's nice. It's interesting. I'm excited for all those shows. By the way, I'm very curious how they're all going to turn out. Very pumped for Castlevania, especially.
All right, I will now go, and then we'll finish off with Dagan. We'll finish Dagan off.
Oh,
No, I noticed. Oh, did I just hit something on my headphones? There we go. Yeah, it sounded all weird on my end. Okay, there we go. I wanted to talk a little bit about internet celebrity. Specifically, I wanted to talk about everyone's individual varied experiences with it, because I think internet celebrity obviously gets insane, way, way, way higher than any of us have ever experienced. However, I think we're in this interesting mid area where you're not like necessarily some obscure figure in your space on the internet. And certainly I think for Chris and I, we've vacillated, and I don't know where Chris feels he is right now on that scale, but where I guess I was probably at my most internet famous during my late time at IGN, I would assume. And so it's been, almost 10 years since I've been at my highest relevance. And so I wanted to just hear how everyone feels about their own level of internet notoriety, how you know what that level is, if you have any interesting thoughts about it. And I don't know, just a kind of an open-ended thing, because one thing that the inspiration for this was, you get feedback sometimes, or you see things about yourself and it's always like, oh, just get over it, or like, whatever, whatever. But the person that has that perspective on how you should feel or act or whatever will never be in the position you're in. And that's not to be a dickheaded thing. It's to say that you are an inherently anonymous person, generally speaking. I'm mostly anonymous, 99% anonymous, but not completely anonymous. And so it has a different feel to it. And I don't know, I just was curious what people thought about it, especially because I feel like the three of you are at different levels of this in some sense. So Chris, I actually wanted to start with you and see, how do you feel about your internet celebrity these days, and how have you dealt with it, and how do you deal with it, and do you want it? And I don't know, just however you want to talk about it.
I don't know exactly. Like it's strange because I feel like I've varied so heavily. Like there was a period where I had no relevance at all. There's a period where I had more relevance than I wanted. And then I think I settled recently into a place where I'm like at a comfortable level of notoriety, where like every now and again, if I'm outside, generally, if I go out and I'm walking around, like I will get recognized at least once. Granted, I have my headphones on a lot, so people don't come up to me, but sometimes they do, and it's fine. But I can still like go places and not be harassed by like, I can't even imagine being like a PewDiePie level of famous, where like the second you go into a mall, you can't be at peace. Like I have no interest in that. But there was a point where it was a lot worse. Where I think when me and Lacey were together, that was like the biggest thing, because I remember that was like a big internet story for some fucking reason. Yeah. Where dude, like I can't remember what magazine. It was like some crazy magazine that should not have written about it, wrote about it, like the Times, or like the New York Times, like sincerely. Like it was one of these ridiculous, prestigious magazines wrote about us. And I just remember being like, there has to be more important shit going on than this. But at that time, I remember when we would go out together, it would like magnify our recognizability, because it's like, oh, usually probably people will see you and they'll be like, is that? Nah, it's not him. You know what I mean? But if it's both of us, they were like, oh, it's both of them. And there would be, I remember a couple of occasions where we would be out eating at like a restaurant or something, and we would see people like outside on the street, like recording and stuff like that. Or like people at like another table, like taking pictures. Wow. And it was just like, this is fucking weird. Like,
and Lacey's kind of just disappeared, right? I mean, I haven't spoken to her in a while. She still does something, I think, but she doesn't have a presence like she used to.
No, she's in school. She was, when we were together, she was already kind of in the mindset of being like, I'm kind of over a lot of this.
She was going to nursing school or something, right? Or
she's doing like a therapy. She's a therapist. I think she's like getting a license to do that.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's perfect for her. Yeah, she's great. I loved Lacey. I thought she was awesome, but I haven't spoken to her in a while.
No, she's wonderful. I spoke to her like, I think a week ago or something. We still talk pretty regularly, but she's around you now, actually. I think like in that southern, somewhere around there. I don't remember exactly where. I think it was like one of the Carolinas, maybe. Or
cool. I had no idea. Yeah, she was in Pasadena for all those years. And so that's where I last remember her being. But
but that was like the most, like, I guess, relevant, I guess you could say, like, or as far as like socially relevant, like where I noticed it most, like impacting real world. Like I felt kind of weird going out, because I knew that it would be more than what I signed up for exactly.
Wow.
But I think in like 2019 is when I think I had like the most internet relevance without it transcending into like being disruptive to my real life. And then the pandemic happened and that kind of like threw everything off. But it's weird now because I'll get recognized a lot now from this show or from Snark Tank. People will be like, love the podcasts or something. It's like, because that's obviously like the more frequently uploaded thing that I do. But I'll have people like honk if I'm like walking down the street, they'll like honk and they'll scream out their window. They'll be like, upload, like, when's the new video or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, all right. But I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. Like, it's to the point actually where I feel like I've actually self-sabotaged a little bit in some aspect where like I almost like, I know that I could be a lot bigger than I am, but I almost don't want it because I'm at such a comfortable level right now that I feel like I think about, like, I have all these ideas of like stuff that I could make that probably could like really pop off, but I'm like, oh man, like like what is the ramifications of that? Like, do I need more than I have? Like, I'm so satiated as is that like it worries me a little bit. And so I think there's like probably like a mental block there with content too, where like I definitely think I've kind of crippled my channel in some way, like partially intentionally, just so I can not have to deal with being bigger than I want to be.
Maybe you have writer's block like Alan Wake did.
Maybe. Dude, man, I'm so excited. I've been thinking about it like more that like Alan Wake and Spider-Man like are living like in my head. Like,
yeah, I feel bad for my for the fact that Alan Wake comes out right before I get married, so we're all gonna have to wait. Unfortunately, maybe I'll play it during the wedding. I don't know. We'll see how it. We'll see how it goes.
Also, I'm gonna put it on my Steam Deck.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can play it on Steam. That's true. That's true. Yeah, it's funny you say all that, Chris, because in thinking about, I think I was at my most notorious probably when I left Kind of Funny. And I was on Rogan a couple of times and had like a much higher profile. Like when I was on Rogan, I think I gained like 25,000 Twitter followers. And then it's just been going down back to the number ever since that I had before that, you know, like, yeah. Because it's just like a momentary piece of
because it's unnatural growth. That's the thing.
Right.
It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he also has just zero interest in video games. So that people are always like, oh, you should go back on Rogan. I'm like, you don't go back on Rogan. He invites you. I couldn't believe he invited me a second time. I don't think it's going to happen.
Incredible.
A third time. And they were both in the same year too. So it was a long time ago. But that was probably when I was like at my most notorious, but I think I was at my most relevant probably when I was at IGN running IGN PlayStation, because just that comes with especially at that time, a level of like industry power, really. What's going to be on the top story? What games will you review? What will you give things and all of that? So ever since then, I've kind of had to deal with declining brightness in my star, but it's like you, where I don't know that I really care, because it's like losing your check mark on Twitter. And I was saying to people, like, I can't wait until I lose my check mark so I can finally change my name. And then I lost my check mark and I finally changed my name. I'm like, I don't care about that stuff. I really don't. It reminds me of something I used to say to Greg back at Kind of Funny when we were starting Kind of Funny, even when we were still at IGN, which is, I would say, like, you can have 90% of the fame. I just want half of the money. And we used to laugh about that because he loves that stuff and he eats it up. And that was perfect. He was like the black hole around me that made sure I didn't have to worry about any of the stuff that I didn't want to do, which is different now. But because I don't have someone like that, I don't really want to put myself out there too much. And for the first time in the last few years, I really thought about, I don't calibrate it, but I've thought about managing my own appearance, like what I'm saying, where I am, the value of that. And the reality is, and this is kind of this is just me shooting from the hip and being honest, is like the more quiet I've become and the more reserved I become, the more money I've made and the better the company is done. So like there's something about the scarcity model that I could have appreciated probably much sooner in my life. Yeah. And not giving myself so much, because, you know, you feel like if you're not speaking, if you're not being heard, if you don't have an opinion, everyone's gonna be like, oh, Colin doesn't exist anymore. Right. But in reality, no one wants to gives a flying fuck about what I think about anything except for the things that they come to the shows for. And then you just talk on the show and it remains like some sort of base level of relevance for you, even though you're not out there and no one would really know unless they came to you. But the shows do better and better and better and better the more quiet I've become. And did I float this theory? Did I do it to you, Dustin? That I just feel like you say things online on Twitter and you inevitably get under someone's skin and you lose them as a patron. It's not to say that you're not losing or gaining any different. It's just that you're not taking those opportunity costs ever again. And in return, it just feels like you have disappeared off the face of the planet to a lot of people. But I can live with that as long as I'm comfortable, and I'm very comfortable. So it's the same thing you've achieved, Chris, where it's like, yeah, the level of comfort intersects properly with the outcome. And right. I realize the same thing, that I don't really care. In fact, I used to get kind of uncomfortable because, and I'm sure it's like what you said, when you feel a person's eyes on you, but they don't say anything and you know that they're giving you a knowing look or just trying to figure out who you are. I used to experience that a lot. And there were times, especially with Greg, who I would think is kind of famous in some sense, not like internet famous, but now he does his WWE show and all of that. Sure. We would go out to dinner. We'd have like weekly dinners or go out or whatever, and regularly be recognized even by our waiter because of either the two of us or him. And I went to a restaurant in Santa Monica right after I was on Dave Rubin's show once, and the guy next to me was like, "Oh, I just saw you on Dave Rubin's show." And I was like, Jesus Christ.
It's incredible.
And then I came here, and I've been recognized here a few times too, but I don't go out very much. So, but I don't think I said this. I went to Gin Blossoms. I didn't say this, I don't think. When I went to see the Gin Blossoms in Sugar Ray, there was a dude down the row from me in a Sacred Symbol shirt.
Oh, no way.
He probably heard you were going.
No, he did. He's like, I heard you were going to be at the show. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, so you'll like, and I'm like, I didn't know you were going to sit in the same row though, because it was just a lot of standing room and you bring your own blankets and stuff. And then just very close to the stage were seats, and we got the seats because I didn't want to like bring a blanket and a chair and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was just interesting, but just being, so that just shows you that people are kind of around you and they recognize you or they know you. And I'm not really crazy about that. I feel like it used to make me uncomfortable when I would get in an Uber. It's like, is this Uber driver going to capture me and I'm going to be captive? I'm sure Chris has, and I don't mean in a bad way. I mean like captive to a conversation, captive to a, like Chris has probably experienced this too. People putting cameras in your faces, or, yo, can you say hello to my friend, or like a Snapchat, or can you say something for my podcast, or leave a voicemail for my friend, like that kind of stuff. And I'm like,
I've had people come up and be like, yo, can you tell my friend to kill himself?
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, sure. I don't mind that. That's fun. But that's like, hilarious. But at a certain point, like you have to be in the mode for that. You know what I mean? Like it's, if I'm at, I don't know, like a convention or something, I kind of expect it because it's an intersection of all this. It's usually an intersection of a lot of people. Like if it's VidCon, it's clearly going to be a lot of people who are very privy to internet stuff who definitely know me. If I'm at like something like PAX or E3, it's probably less so, but still pretty high. So like I know that I'm going to be stopped and people are going to ask me to do stuff, and I transition into that mode where I'm totally fine. I turn myself, I'm on, and I'm good to do it. But then there's sometimes like, man, I don't know, man, you're on your way to like a Ralph's, to get groceries.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I don't know.
It's situational. I think, so I guess what I'm saying and reflecting on is that I'm kind of further and further away from that space now, where the first time I went out to eat here, actually, I went out with a friend, and I was saying to them, they were asking like, do you get recognized? And I'm like, not really, and then I got recognized at the restaurant that we went to, and it almost as if I paid that person to like say something to me. And
that happens a lot. That's serendipitous kind of thing where it's like you almost feel like, oh man, it's not going to happen today. And then it does.
Right. Exactly. But I embrace that. It's not that I mind people bothering or, and again, it's a very similar thing. When I was at PSX, people were up my ass. And then it kind of from there diminishes a little bit depending on the show you're in. There was a guy at the first PSX that had Google Glass on and was talking to me, and I'm like, I really don't want to talk to you with those things on your face.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy at our like when we do our live shows, everybody recognizes me. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's great. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Right. So that's the whole point is that I'm at a point now in my life where since I'm not in those like 100% or more likely situations almost ever, and I'm kind of just in the middle of nowhere now. It's not a problem for me anymore, and it's kind of perfect. I never really wanted to be famous. I want to leave a mark on the world. I want to be remembered in some way by someone in posterity, but it's really not important for me to be famous. I really always just wanted security, and fame, I guess, helped me get it. Internet fame in some sense helped me get it, but yeah, that it's I'm a decade away from my highest relevance, and it would be what I would consider largely irrelevant outside of, you know, a very specific space. That's cool with me. You know, maybe that comes with a level that I would have dreaded that 10 years ago probably, but no, I don't care anymore. You know.
Yeah.
Dig, I'm sorry, Chris, did you have more to say?
No.
Oh, okay. Dig and Dustin too, and you guys can both tune in, but we'll go to Dig first. I'm curious, now you guys are at, you know, objectively lower levels of internet fame, but experience, and again, it's all relative because none of us are like that famous, but on the spectrum of where we are, you guys are lower. And Dig, I'm wondering how you deal with it, because you're very nice. No, I've reflected on this before, and you say I'm going to jinx you or whatever, but largely you're not, no one really busts your balls publicly or privately, right? Like
not really. PJ mentioned, so he saw a YouTube comment that said somebody had mentioned that they wished I was more manly.
PJ's Dagan's best friend.
That person's a genius. I'm not going to get mad at that, you know? Yeah.
So,
no, but for the most part, people are very polite.
Yeah. You're in this like tight, interesting space where people like you, they want more of you, but you're, you know, somewhat on the periphery. You have a little bit of a buzz in a surrounding, but you don't really leverage it or take advantage of it, which is fine. Most people don't. So I'm curious, like, where you feel like you sit in the spectrum of internet fame. I mean, you've had your experience with Last Stand for the first time, probably in a major way of shaking hands and meeting and greeting and doing all those kinds of things. Although the things you've worked on in animation would, if people knew, would probably have, and if you had access to the people that liked that stuff, would probably have given you that experience earlier.
Yeah, I think, this is a weird one for me because, you know, the first thing I thought about when you sent the topic was, I know we have this sort of traditional sense or this traditional model of famous in the world, right? Actors, actresses, pro athletes, rock stars, maybe high level politicians, traditionally people that are universally recognized, globally recognized, can't go anywhere. But it is interesting. And I don't know if we think about this enough. We're in this era, this really strange era, and it's the Wild West, right? Where if you're entertaining or funny or talented in some way, insightful, knowledgeable about a topic, any topic, pick one, you can be famous. Now, not everybody that endeavors to do those things does get famous, but we're in this era where you could make your own fame. There's a new level of fame. You know, the YouTuber, the internet celebrity. And I do think about that. You know, we're in the really the sort of the onset of it. And, you know, now I really don't have any fame. And I don't say that courting sympathy. I think a lot of it is sort of purposely curated by me. And I'm in kind of this fame sweet spot, I realize, where I get DMs from people that like the shows and have nice things to say, or thank you for making my day. I had a rough one. This was funny, or this was insightful. And I enjoy that interaction. I don't really try to cultivate any sort of celebrity with social media. I have a very hands-off, hot and cold relationship with social media that we discussed many times. But I guess in my perfect world, I would like my fame to just kind of culminate in an appreciation for the things I create. You know, whether if that's listening to the shows or watching the shows or enjoying something I created or drew or animated. If I could just get that appreciation or the eyeballs on the stuff, that's what makes the most sense to me. You know, that's really where I want people to say, like, oh, I enjoyed you saying this, or you made my day. I'm having a tough week, or I'm in the process of a divorce. Thank you, you know, for kind of lightening the load a little bit. Or this was, you know, this interaction with Chris was funny, or this was a particular bit of insight that I enjoyed. I realized that I don't try to sort of have any type of fame besides I really do want people to watch the podcasts and listen to the podcasts and enjoy the content. I do have this personality where I like people. I'm a little shy. I'm a little introverted, but I really do like people, and I do like people appreciating the stuff we make for them. But I do tend to think that if I got any kind of real, actual fame, any kind of semblance of fame, as big as what you and Chris have, Kyle, I think I would be one of those dudes that just goes to ground. I just think I would be like the Daniel Day-Lewis, like going to lay brick somewhere. There's just something about really being actually famous.
You're going to lay brick, no doubt.
That may I'm going to lay tube steak.
Oh. I will say this though. I think Chris is more famous than me. Like by a fairly substantial margin.
All right. Yeah.
In my opinion.
I hear you. It is a descending level of I should have went last because obviously, but yeah, there is something. And you know what I think it is? It's not a personal thing with not wanting to interact with people. That's always a pleasure, whether it's a meet and greet or the very few times I've gotten recognized. That's, for me, that's wonderful. You know, that's a new experience for me still. And it probably will always stay that way. But I think it might, for me, dispel, I don't know, whatever kind of energy I put into the stuff, because I don't want it to become about that. Whether it's a conversation I'm having on a podcast or an animation I'm working on or an illustration or anything I create, I just think there's something for me personally that's unnatural because it's really about the thing I'm creating, not about me personally, you know, which with podcasting specifically is weird because you almost kind of can't treat the art, the visual art and the podcasting the same because just by the nature of what we do, people are getting to know me. Mm-hmm. Right. Inherently. The and things it's also about hearing about my life, what my reactions. So maybe I have to change my thinking with that a little bit. And again, it doesn't bother me, but I do realize it's like, you know, why do I only have 9,000 followers on Twitter? Right. It's like, well, I kind of don't realize this a lot, but I pretty much keep it like that. You know, my following is very organic. It grows, but I'm not doing anything to water the plant. You know what I mean? I never do. The only thing I do is this. And I think that's where I put the value. You know, it's like appreciate what I'm creating. I don't really care about, you know, the follows are lovely. Don't get me wrong, but I don't not value those things, but it's really just about the stuff. It's just really about creating. And I think that's just my personality.
It's funny because like, I think now I appreciate there's certain things about fame, like specifically anonymous fame that I'm really like, I really like when I make something that pops off and it gets stolen, that has nothing to do with me. It's like I get like a weird sense of satisfaction. Like there's this image that I made up like a couple months ago of like this AI grandma encased in resin. And it's
still your pinned tweet, I think, right?
It's still my pinned tweet because I'm so proud of it. But like I have seen that go viral like at least like 200 times at this point. Like I every day people will send me a new like account that like is like posting it and like people believing it. And it's like, and I got the amount of satisfaction that I get out of that is so much greater than anything that I have like put effort into and made and been recognized for doing it. You know what I mean?
Chris, you're the creator, correct me if I'm wrong, of the LOL nice reach.
Yeah,
right?
I made that too. Yeah.
I don't know if Dagan's ever seen this.
Yeah, it's a Halo meme, but there's
a Halo meme that is very
obviously
well known.
I made that. It's like if there's anybody who was going to make that, it would be me.
Yeah, but I've seen it all over the place here, Dagan. I'll put it in the chat. So
I get a similar sense of satisfaction from that too. Yeah.
LOL.
It's like I love that. I love it.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's pretty brilliant.
It's what your mentality that you're describing, Chris, is what I say to Micah. I don't go into the Discord meme channel anymore, but I used to be in there all day and fucking farming memes, making memes, and I used to say it's a leave a penny, take a penny tray, and every once in a while you got to just put one in there, and you know it's a banger, and someone's gonna steal it and it's gonna circulate, and that's a compliment. That's meme culture. Right. Wrapped up into a nutshell. You don't, because I do sometimes. I ask Micah sometimes because Micah makes really funny memes on the low, like on the low, and then just puts them out there. And I'm like, do you ever just think about doing like one shade off gray watermarking on this? And she's like, I don't care. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the spirit, isn't it? Like you really shouldn't care where it comes from.
I love that.
That's the culture of putting that in there. So yeah, it's like a leave a penny, take a penny tray. But Dig, I like the way you put it about nurturing it and I realize I could do the same too. See, the weird thing about personality, in my opinion, is people will suggest and I don't know what the answer is. People will suggest that I'm internet famous or became well known on the internet in our space at some point for some reason because I talk about PlayStation in a really good way. And some people will say that it's because I have made it very personal and weird. And really the only way, I don't know how to podcast. Everything I know about podcasting came from Podcast Beyond and my time on that show. And what I realized on that show, it's so funny looking back on it, we would do it for like an hour or 90 minutes a week. And it's like, if we were smart, we would have done that all day, every day. And IGN would have made fucking so much money and it would have been, but I learned from that show, it's like people are there for the subject matter. Yes. And we get, especially on Sacred Symbols, completely out of control by intention, by not talking about video games for sometimes an hour at a time.
I love that.
But people suggest that on the other hand, that's why the show is well known, that's why it differentiates it. And it reminds me of a show that I always pimp around the NFL, which is another show like that, where it's very funny. And it's just half of it is about them busting each other's balls. They have fucking grievances like with each other and long running bets and stories and random characters they bring in that call into the show and all this kind of stuff. And it loses track of itself. And I think that's part of what's fun about that content. But I think it's kind of hard. It's kind of a compliment to be well known in quotes for that. Because it says that something about you is, I guess, interesting or funny, which I take as a compliment.
You know? It's what makes it. It's what makes it a show. Because when you think about, like, I don't know, the news,
right?
That's not a show. You know, like people, if people are going to the news for the news, they watch the news. You know, and that's
a great point.
That's it. Like, you don't think of like Neil Cavuto or like any of these people on like a show,
right? We don't even know them. We could see them for years and we don't even know them.
No, exactly. But like, you know, that hour of nonsense is what makes it arguably a show. And obviously all the interstitial nonsense in between all the news is what makes it a show.
And
the stuff, love you guys.
And the funny stuff about the news too. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me. Micah says this to me sometimes that I think she's half serious. It's like one of those half serious things where she's like, you can never just like take anything seriously or just be serious for like about anything. And I'm like, I know, I think it's a coping mechanism for how hard life is. I think it's probably something deeply ingrained in me, but I find humor and I want to make fun of everything.
Yeah, it's your creativity, I think. I do think that.
Maybe. It could be my autism. I don't really know one way or the
They
other.
come for PlayStation on Sacred Symbols, but they love you guys. The people are at the root of it. I love the reference to the news.
Yeah.
Where it's just this unbiased thing of like, here's the information. But they're coming for your personalities, the interaction. They're getting to know you guys. And then the play, you know, the content of what you guys are talking about, the interest at the center of that is another thing. But that's how you build a dimension.
Right.
You know, I can't believe you would say something like you don't know how to podcast. You're one of the best podcasters I've ever seen.
Well, what I'm saying is that it's like, did Babe Ruth really know how to swing a baseball bat or did he just do it? Like, did he just learn how to do it and know it without really being, because I can't really describe it. I don't think you can replicate Sacred Symbols. And so, but I also feel very fortunate to have found someone like Chris, because it was a frankly tall order to replace, like, you know, this idea in the audience's mind that Colin will now be with someone else. But when I think back on it, it's basically been almost as long with Chris and I, you know, and people have come to really appreciate like the camaraderie and the show itself and the funniness and the kind of the quirkiness of it. So I appreciate that. But that comes with, I think, some ceiling of popularity in some sense, because the show is so inaccessible. And I don't mean that as a joke. It is massively inaccessible. And that's kind of by design. But I think that sometimes I wonder, I'm like, wow, how big would Sacred Symbols be if we just did it like the right way, you know, in some sense. And then I wonder, like, would it be relevant at all if we did it the right way? Because then it would just be like something else. And
there's the comments where people on YouTube every once in a while are like, well, the show doesn't really start until an hour and 2 minutes. And there's almost always a listener that comments that says, you don't get it. You don't really like Sacred Symbol. You don't understand, do you?
Yeah.
And I always I never have to say that, which is what I always appreciate. Somebody says it for us.
Well, Dusty, let's hear from you about this. You know, you started as a production person, although you had your podcasting stuff and your website and aspirations to be something more in front of the camera. And you did, you streamed and did everything. So I'm not saying that I made you in any way, but I did identify in you and bringing you on to Sacred Symbols something that I think was deeper than people had realized from your ability to be a more outspoken person. I'm glad I did that. I think it makes the show a lot better. I'm wondering how you've dealt with being on a show like Sacred Symbols that has real eyeballs on it, because that's the other thing I should say is that Sacred Symbols is so much smaller than my old podcasts. You know, it's still, it's the biggest PlayStation podcast and those other 2 PlayStation podcasts still exist. And that should show you how big those shows used to be. Podcast Beyond used to get over 1 million downloads a month.
Holy shit. I didn't know that.
Well, like when we were doing, which is insanity. You know, that's several times what we do. So again, falling star to the earth, no doubt. But we bring you on board, and I wonder how you've felt about all of it. Is it the culmination of what you wanted? Did you want more fame, less fame? How are you dealing with it?
I have an interesting perspective specifically on this from the fact that specifically in games media, we'll say that I was on the other side of this as a listener who followed these different people. These were the people that were more important to me than a movie star. Not that I treated it like that necessarily, but these are the people that I thought were really cool, really interesting, and that I followed and had what I would say is the healthy parasocial relationship. We all have parasocial relationships with whoever you listen to or like. Like, I know, maybe not Chris, but we all listen to Joe Rogan. Colin's the only one who's actually ever met him. I have some kind of relationship with him in my head, even though it doesn't exist, right? So I saw how a lot of these people interacted with listeners, and not only that, but how they interacted with me. And so I feel like that was really helpful in seeing when I was able to finally start to be able to do something like this. Like, okay, these are the good things to do. These are the bad things to do. So keep that in mind. And I would say, much like Dagan, it's a very low level. It's enough though that every once in a while, someone in my family will be like, "Hey, Dustin, are you famous?" I'm like, "No, definitely not. Only in a very specific scenario will anybody recognize me." And I do get recognized every once in a while. In Butler, particularly, almost never. I've been recognized one time in Butler. At a yard sale it was like a business yard sale where people from the business were bringing their stuff. And maybe this person's listening right now. It was funny though, because it was the husband, and the wife was the one who actually was like, "Are you Dustin Furman? My husband loves Sacred Symbols. He just he was too shy to say anything." I've had that happen a few times where the wife will say something that doesn't really care and the guys are a little shy. But
that's so funny.
So as far as getting recognized, I think that anyone who says they don't care, or they're like, "Oh, I can take it or leave it," I think I can see times where it would definitely be annoying. Absolutely. But it was always fun to me. I got to say, it's a little extra. I felt good this past summer when I went to the Yellow Card show in Baltimore. And that was the first time I got recognized in front of my mom. And something about that felt extra good because I could tell that she thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to prove to her. She loves me. She's very proud of me. She understands. She's been to our live show. She understands that I'm successful and is proud of that. But getting recognized at that show, I could tell she had a little smirk going on. And I thought, good. That makes me happy. So if you guys ever see me with my parents, or especially my in-laws, definitely make a big deal out of it. That would make me feel very good. Again, I know my in-laws love me too, but
that's so funny.
Do you know what I'm saying, Chris? Do you agree with this?
No, I totally know what you're saying. Yeah, like when I remember specifically, there are a handful of occasions where like I was with my mom or like with my dad or something. I remember one occasion specifically. It was like super late at night, and we were getting Five Guys for the rest of the family because we were on Five Guys. And I was like, all right, I'll go grab it. My mom came with, and it was an empty fight. It was just me and my mom and the clerk. And the clerk was like, "You're Chris Reagan, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Don't. Are you gonna poison my food?" And he's like, "No." but I could tell, like, I don't know. There is something that they like that. I guess right. It's like I don't know what it is, and I do want to clarify too. Like, it's a good feeling to get recognized. Like, I always like it. Like, because there is like something about it where it feels like, oh, it means that like what I'm doing is like resonating with real people.
Yeah, it's real.
It gets kind of difficult to feel when you're just looking at like numbers or like stats, where it's like you understand that it's real, like logically, but it's different when you like meet a person in real life and they say like, oh man, I like your stuff or whatever. It's like, it's a good feeling for sure.
Definitely.
It's just like, there's always like an inopportune moment,
Yeah.
like, just like, oh man, I'm having like the worst day of my fucking life right now. And I'm walking down the street and then like, I've got like tears in my eyes kind of. And then like some guy's like, hey man. And I'm like,
what's up, Slitterhead?
What's up, Slitterhead? Yeah, that's the thing, Chris, about, because I agree, it does feel good. It makes it feel real. Because sometimes I think, and I do think about this sometimes, like, what if all of this was just a Truman Show type thing? The numbers are fake. You're all in on it. No one's really watching it. It's totally manipulated.
Definitely.
And it has no audience at all. And it's just like some social experiment. And so it does remind you that it's real. But I think it's not that I've it's kind of interesting. I've never had what I would consider a bad experience. And I've met thousands of people at this point when you consider all the meet and greets, all of the, all the years. And I've never had someone where it's like, that sucked. Like, who the fuck was that? I've had weird interactions a few times, but, like I said, when I was in Santa Monica, a dude from Europe came and like hugged me.
That's incredible.
And that was interesting just because I'm like, you don't know me that well if you think that you should be hugging me like that, but that's fine. I don't want, but that's the whole thing, is that I really had to turn on the, like, Colin, do the right thing. Like, because I don't want anyone to have a bad experience, because I don't want to ruin anyone's opinion of me based on some, like you said, catching me at the wrong time.
Dude, exactly, right. Man. Like,
I'd rather just not be recognized.
I've only had one experience really that was, and it really wasn't bad. It was like weird, like you said, where like they didn't know how to ask for a picture, so they just kind of took one. And I was like, this kind of. They were nice, and I could tell that they were just like really socially awkward about it. They were running into me like when I was walking home from, I don't know, I was living in Glendale and it was like 90 degrees and I was walking like 14 blocks home because I didn't have a car. And it was like, hey man, I love your stuff. Or like, and then they just took a picture and I was like, maybe relax with that. But it wasn't like the worst, it wasn't like they assaulted me or anything.
Right.
Colin, you mentioned some of the awkward people that we, and that's going to happen. I mean, we're in gaming. We're kind of awkward to our own degree as well.
Definitely.
Something that really helped me that I actually learned years ago from listening to Greg. This is something Greg said, is that you meet certain people that want to meet you and talk to you, but they don't know what to say. And you kind of got to clue into that and speak for them. Not speak for them, but just kind of, it feels very unnatural for me to just, you got to like turn on this side of you that's like, they're not used to talking. They're used to hearing you talk. And that's what they would rather you just talk right now than say anything. So you got to kind of learn. For me, it's been about learning how, when you meet someone, figuring out what level of sociability they are and then try to meet them where they are. Because like you said, it's a very, very important thing when you meet that person, because maybe they listen to you for hours and hours, dozens of hours, hundreds of hours with sacred symbols. I mean, who knows? And so that one interaction is going to be associated with that feeling of that person, how they feel about you forever after that. And there are people before I was doing sacred symbols or working for Last Stand, that I met in scenarios where it wasn't like I was meeting them on the street, that were not so nice. And I have always remembered that. Oh, I will say a positive one. Ryan McCaffrey was someone who was super awesome. Really nice to me.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart.
No following. I had dinner with him and Dustin Legary, actually.
Yeah, Dustin's also a sweetheart.
They were both super awesome. And I will never forget that, ever, how nice they were to me. Mm-hmm. So that's something that lives. That
lives for a long time. Did I ever tell you the story about getting recognized on my way out of E3?
I don't know.
It was so I was coming out of E3 and it was Lacey, and I was with Lacey and a couple friends of mine, and we were walking to our car. We had parked like many, many blocks away. And the first block, there was a homeless guy, and he was like, hey, can change or whatever. And I was like, no. And then I like walked past, and on the second block, there was another homeless guy. And I was like, oh my God. And I just ignored him. I was just like, I can't, I don't want to deal with this right now. And on the third block, somebody was like, hey. And I just like walked, I did not look at him at all. And I just like walked straight past him. Like I was blocks away from Lacey and our friends at this point. Like I was just like trying to get ahead of all these people, because I wanted to speed run through these people. And then by the time Lacey had caught up with that guy, he was like, Chris, this guy's a fan. And I turned around like screaming from the other block. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted my money.
That
I'll never
sucks.
forget that because it felt like a punch. It felt like a joke being written in real time. Like the 1, 2, 3, like, flip expectations.
Yeah, that was
thing.
perfect.
It was nuts. I was like, I'm sorry. I felt so bad about that. I was like, I walked right past. Like I didn't look him in the eye. Fucking probably felt horrible.
I think something that I appreciate about, I guess this is for all of us, because I think this is a company-wide thing, but I think, Colin, you said this specifically at our first event when we were meeting people, because we like stopped in the middle to take photos, and it was a very long 6 hours. We're very tired, somewhat maybe hungover, dehydrated, meeting all the hundreds of fans that came out. And you had said something like, this is what it's all about, because these people that we're meeting are the lifeblood of the company, and this is the, we need to give as much as we can, because they're the ones that allow us to do what we do.
Absolutely.
And so that's how I've always felt about meeting people. I worry sometimes. I don't want people to see it as vanity, where it's like tomorrow is the Pittsburgh Gaming Convention, where Ben and I are going to go there. I don't know how many people are going to be there. I don't know if it's going to be, if any Last Stand fans will be there. They were last year, but it's not a thing where I feel, I want to make sure we have a nice event so people can go and boost Ben and I's ego in Pittsburgh at the gaming event. It's like, no, I know there are local fans here, and I know that if I can give back to them in the way that they've give back to us, then that's a positive thing. And I mean, sure, maybe there's like positive aspects where it's like, yeah, I want to give to these people. They support us. They allow us to do this. At the same time, you want to have them to have that experience, positive experience with the product, and that's good for the business too. Right. That sounds really nasty to say it that way, but I'm not going to not acknowledge that. It's just a reality of the situation too, that there's many different positive aspects of it. And so those things are always important. I always look for opportunities where we can meet and hang out with people. Dagan and I did too many games. At the same time, I don't want to be at my parents' house and be like, I'm doing a meet and greet in 20 minutes down at the Popeyes or something like that. Like, you don't want to be too crazy. Well, Greg was getting into that position at one point where he was like, meet and greet at the airport.
Yeah, Altan and I used to make fun of him. We would say what we would say to him was like, can't you just have a dinner? Is what
and that got beat to death. That meme,
yeah, it did. I think it bothered him a little bit, which I understand, because Greg's heart's in the right place. He's just he wants to like make everyone happy. I will say he was a master of just meeting people and knowing people and shaking hands and making people feel seen and doing all of that, which it was masterfully done and really interesting. I also remember like he's funny too, like where he would take his shirt off, or it's just, he was super funny and outgoing, and it did wear off on me in some sense, like and I appreciated that. So it was weird. I always say I'm like a terrible leader, or not like a great leader of men. I never expected to be the center of attention, as it were, of the product, as this thing has grown in some sense, which is why I'm so desperate to do other shows with other people, so that maybe something else will become even bigger than Sacred Symbols, and it doesn't have to ride so much on this show. But in the meantime, it was cool to kind of be around someone like that, who I would consider somewhat of a luminary in his space in terms of the ability to just meet. And I remember being at PSX, and he had like a fucking reception line.
Wow.
When we were just in the hall. And I literally just walked. Everyone's like, hey, Colin, like on the line. I was like, hey, guys, hey, everyone. And I just went and sat down in my seat. And then he just sat there and received them like he was the Queen of England or something. It was interesting.
I remember being at PSX and standing outside. I think I wanted to buy something in the store, but Greg was getting maybe it was you and Greg getting a private session in the PlayStation Gear store where no one else was there.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you couldn't shop. It makes sense at a place like PlayStation.
PSX it was interesting, dude. Like PSX was the only time in my life where I felt like I was famous. Like where it was like, we had private security with us at all times. Like, and people, we weren't allowed to be like, oh, whoa, like stand down, security. And like, let me shake this guy. It's like, no, we have a bubble around you as we're moving from place to place. And that was the thing in that store. Yeah. We went and had like a private shopping session in the store.
I remember that. Yeah.
I don't know if we even paid for that stuff, to be honest with you. But I would imagine we might have. I don't know. That was a different era. I mean, I was totally, when I was at IGN and Kind of Funny, we used to get all sorts of free shit from PlayStation on a constant basis. Like I said, I have a fucking sealed in box 20th anniversary PS4 in my closet, which was from the first PSX.
Right. And listen, that's what, Greg genuinely loved that, the recognition, the fame, like that's what moved him. God bless. Like you gotta get what you want out of things. Can I just, as we sunset the topic, I want to say something to you guys.
Yeah.
From my very specific POV in the trenches of fame over here, or, maybe we should call it the cheap seats or the nosebleeds or whatever. But here's something I think about a lot, but I never get to articulate. I do think about this kind of frequently. Like I think about this, and this is a great panel to say this with, although this would apply to Maddie and Cog and Jaffe, to some Gene too. But sitting with you guys specifically is perfect timing. I think about this a lot. Like I think of Dustin, right? He's 1/3 of the biggest PlayStation podcast on the planet. I think of Chris, a guy who has close to 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Think of Colin, who with his level of fame and his legacy and the association with Dave Rubin and Rogan and being courted by various news outlets, and the fact that you probably could be although you're doing great, you probably could be even more famous now. So I think about,
dude, if I said yes in 2017 to the people that were offering me things, I would be in a much different world right now.
Dude, I remember it wasn't that long ago.
I've never talked about it publicly, but one day I'll talk about.
Yeah. And I don't want to blow you up before it's time, but I just think of my association. It's like a 1 or 2 degree level of separation from that, like being able to share airtime, as it were, with you guys podcasting on the various shows and stuff like that. And just being associated with that level of fame from somebody, my perspective, is sometimes weird. Like that's sometimes strange. Like, holy shit, I sit with this guy every week, happens to be my brother. He's been on Rogan a couple of times. This guy's got 1 million followers on YouTube. This guy created God of War. Like, you know what I mean? This guy's got tens of thousands of followers on Twitter. It is an interesting thing to be, sort of brushing up against that. I don't take that for granted. And it is interesting. I love what you guys are saying, even in your positions of being like having to be on, not wanting to let your fans down and stuff like that. But can you imagine being like we're having the level of fame that you can't leave the house, like a Tom Cruise?
No, it's like, that's unthinkable to me. It would be horrible to have to live like that. I think about that all the time. I love The West Wing, and there's multiple scenes where they shut something down for the president to go do something, and there's a scene where they shut down like a bookshop for him to go in, and I'm like, man, this sucks. Like he can't go anywhere or do anything forever for the rest of his life. Like he can never do anything. Yeah, exactly. And you got to have Secret Service around you, and you feel like even that's going to be annoying. I love having just the right level of fame to have a successful life and a secure life, but yet not have to go overboard with it. And someone like Greg, I thought was really, he did embrace it, and I used to bust his balls about it a lot, but in hindsight, it was that embrace of what we were or what we could be that allowed us to get to the next level. I think to like embrace, like, no, this is bigger than you think. Like you're not on GameFAQs anymore. And like, this isn't a forum thing or a small thing. Like you can embrace that it's big or whatever and lean into it. And I appreciate that, because it was the first time that I really believed that about myself, I guess, in some way. And then the stuff that I was courted to after I left Kind of Funny, it's like, I didn't want to be like, I could have probably ended up pretty big, but it would have been obnoxious and like culture war stuff.
Yeah.
And I just didn't.
I would imagine that I would imagine that you and I probably got very similar type of courtships.
Yeah, probably.
Around that time.
Yeah, we should talk more about that, because it's
yeah.
And it's an honor, and it's nice. It was cool and interesting, but it's like, I don't want to be the angry conservative video game guy or something. Like it's not really what I want. And I just realized very quickly, I'm like, I kind of hate this shit, which I think you discovered as well, Chris, although maybe I fucking hate this shit. I don't want to do this.
Well, dude, I knew immediately that it was like, cause I remember people getting courted with like stupid money to go and basically just, hey, we really love, your conservative content. You want to make more conservative content? I was like, you don't watch my content.
Obviously.
You really don't know what I'm doing here. You saw the thumbnail and made a drastic assumption. No.
Wow. And offered that kind of money based on that limited interaction.
Yeah.
And the integrity of you to say no, by the way.
Well, I didn't believe it. Also, like, it's just not my politics at all. And also just like, I knew that, like, dude, I was already on my way out of that stuff. Like I already was transitioning into like, just, I wanted to do video game stuff. Like, I don't care about this internet bullshit really at all. And so like I don't know. It frustrates me specifically when people are like, oh, Chris is grifting or whatever, because it's like, dude, you have no idea how much I could have sold you guys up the river, man. You have no idea. I would have made so much money spouting shit I didn't even believe. Like, I owned a mansion by now. And you're calling me a grifter now? Like, oh, man.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
You have no fucking idea.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's it was almost as soon as I started my political content that I was like, I'm not cut out for this. And I just don't find and derive any happiness out of it. That's what it's interesting. Sometimes people criticize me and say, like, Colin, basically like washed out of politics and came back to games because he had to. And I'm like, that's one interpretation, I suppose. But in reality, I could have sold out at that point and been better than fine. None of this would exist. And who knows where I'd be now? I don't know. I'm just so glad that I took the independent route and avoided. I was lucky. A lot of that came from being bought out from Kind of Funny, honestly, but being like, I don't have to financially worry immediately. So I don't have to sell out to big brand X, Y, and Z right now at all. And it gave me time to figure out in my mind, like, you don't need them. And so it all worked out better. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to touch base with you guys on this. I thought it was an interesting topic. I think
100%.
I think it also feels for me therapeutic in some sense to talk about it with someone that's both more famous than me and someone or people that are a little less famous than me, in quotes, fame again, relative. This is in our little bubble.
It's a difficult thing to relate to people on because not a lot of people experience this.
Right. And that's what I was saying earlier about people giving you advice about X, Y, and Z. And it's like, but you will never understand nonetheless. Right. And it's not because you're a bad person or untalented or whatever. It's because you're just not going to understand. Just like I'm not going to understand what it is to do what you do. So yeah, it's cool to talk about it. I hope to keep this level of fame and success going for as long as possible. I'm very happy with it. But let's go around the horn one more time about this and talk about this though as we exit. And I'm interested in what you guys have to say about this. Do you ever feel like it's like you're going to fall off at some point, right? Like we all are. At some point, we're all going to wash out. I think. I don't know if I can imagine doing this for 30 more years in some sense, and the audience being big enough for me to live on it. But I think that it would necessarily become some sort of very niche product for probably older and older people or something like that. I look at my career as that of an athlete. And I think I've articulated this before in that, like, there is just going to be an inevitable end. You must take advantage of the situation while it's going. You have to have the prescience of mind to understand you are in the moment. Yeah. And not look back and be like, damn, we could have done a lot better in the moment that we'll never get back. I wonder if, Chris, do you ever consider that like one day you might become just a has-been? Like I think about that sometimes for myself.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure people feel that way about me right now, So like, I don't know. I think I think about it sometimes, but I don't know if I care because there's so many things that I know how to do. And there's so many, I don't know, like I have so many avenues that I would be eager to try if certain things didn't work out or things kind of naturally fell off. The only reason I even started a lot of my YouTube stuff in the first place was because I wanted to edit. Like I like editing. And I didn't really care to be in front of the camera. I just didn't feel comfortable enough asking other people to do it. And I just needed stuff to edit. So like if I wanted to, I could just go edit for people. And I bet I could make a good amount of money doing it, and I could have a great time doing it. There's music and all sorts of shit in that regard that I feel like I could do really well on. I don't know. That's kind of like one of those things where it's like you cross that bridge when you come to it. Because the more you, I guess it never hurts to prepare. But I guess like, I don't know. I feel like in some ways preparation accelerates.
Yeah, because you have to. Preparation requires you to accept that it will even happen at all, I guess, in some sense.
Well, preparation just requires its own amount of mental energy that could be spent on just keeping the thing going. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, at least for me, like, I'm very like, I get very in my own head about a lot of stuff. So if I let myself dwell on certain things too much, like nothing's going to get done. And then it's just, it's going to be like a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
I get that. You
know, so, I mean, I try not to think about it, but even if I do think about it for a little bit, I'm in a pretty good position right now. I've saved a lot. I'm in a really kind of stable environment right now. Like our Snark Tank's growing like crazy in the last like couple weeks.
Awesome. Love it.
Cause
we'll be opening for you soon.
I don't know about that. We still got a ways to go before we're even close to Last Stand, but you know, that's going super well. To the point where Derek's already talking about like, oh, he's probably going to come back out here so we can do it in person, because we do feel like in person is better, or at least just like for the flow of conversation. And so we're looking into that, and
in person is better.
I get that.
In person is totally better.
It would be impossible for us to do it with this,
right?
But because Sweeney is so close and Derek's basically there, it's a little bit more feasible for us to do it over on that show. But you know, I don't know. I'm sure it will happen, but I can't really bother myself with the thought of it, because it's not something that I have to focus on right now, and I really just need to focus on everything that I need to focus on, you know?
It's funny because I think I agree with you in the sense that my entire adult career has been in preparation for my obsolescence.
Right.
That has so far not come, you know, and knock on wood, but I'm the same way. I've lived well below my means for a very long time and just saved and tried to just live with no bills and no debt and all that kind of stuff. And so that if I have to become some obscure G.I. Joe Twitch streamer with 10 subscribers and I'm making a meager living, it's like, well, that sucks, but it's not going to ruin your life, I guess. And so I just try to live in that and stay in that space and try my hardest for that reason. I'm desperate for that like permanent security, you know, where you can free your mind to think about something other than your day to day, your week to week, your month to month, your year to year, but like the bigger picture. I'm desperate for that. And so I'm grateful that everyone's held on for so long. I wonder what the secret sauce even is. I don't even know at this point. I do think a major part of it is consistency. And it's something that's just totally lost on people. It's so fucking funny to me how people don't get it.
I think it's 90% of it. Honestly, like I think it's like a really significant part of it, because that's a big factor in why any podcast is successful, for sure. But even YouTube channel, like I noticed, like when I stopped uploading frequently, like that hurt my channel for sure. 1,000,000%. Even if I kept uploading garbage, it probably would have been better than just not posting at all.
Yeah.
But that's also like, I don't know. That's its own thing. And in my world, that's like a whole mental problem to get past, because I don't like putting out stuff that I'm not super stoked about. And I can't possibly be super stoked about something every week. So it's like, I don't know, man. It's tricky. You don't want to put out stuff that sucks, but you also don't want to leave the audience hanging. And that's been a point of contention for me in my own head for a while, but
yeah, totally. I just engineer, and Dustin talks about this a lot, and we talk about it, and he has his friends that talk about it, and you obviously, just the whole back end understanding of YouTube to me is a mystery, and I do not understand why they're not more transparent about why it works, or even why manipulating things. Like, shouldn't it be beneficial to a channel to upload less? To say like, this channel that's been dormant, that was very popular, came back and published a video. You think that the algorithm would be like, oh, push.
Right.
You know, like what? That just doesn't.
I wonder if YouTube just got too big. Yeah. Like it's out of even their hands now.
For sure. It's its own breathing organism at this point. Like I sincerely don't think they even. I'm really convinced that the engineers at YouTube don't even fully understand how YouTube works.
I don't think they do.
Yeah.
It's like Frankenstein breaking off the table. It's like they created this thing, but now it's just like unleashed.
Well, to be fair, like I mean, I mean, how many YouTube accounts are there? It's probably the size of probably the amount of accounts that there are on YouTube dwarfs the size of most countries, you know?
Isn't that crazy?
So like they're in charge of this multifaceted organism that has its own population, its own economy, really. It's fucking crazy.
It's insane. I mean, Kyle, I love the sentiment of, being cognizant of, an expiration date. Like nothing lasts forever.
Oh my God. No one's going to want to listen to me, a 70-year-old Colin, talk about that. Like, there are some people are already like, you're already too old. Yeah. So.
Well, it is kind of savvy to be thoughtful of that or forward thinking when you're in it. You know what I mean? Just to be aware, just to have that awareness, I think is really cool. I mean, from my perspective, podcasting is something I enjoy just as much, if not more than almost anything else. But it's a new thing for me. It's not the things that I grew up loving. It's not my family. It's not skateboarding, which I discovered in the 80s. It's not art and drawing and animation. It's kind of like a new love, and the only thing I could possibly ask for, because I really enjoy it. I love doing it so much, is to be at some point to have the choice or the opportunity, the things that I'm a part of, to grow to the point where I could do it full time, not only because I love it so much, but because selfishly it would help fuel my other goals, my other artistic goals or animation goals, which is just to do my own work. You know what I mean? Because it's very hard to do that when you're working in animation. It's not always like this, but like 14 hours a day right now, so that, for me, that's a big motivator of if the podcasting could just take off and get to a certain degree, like it is for a lot of people, right? Work hard at it, grow it, and let that fuel my other dreams, really, essentially. But other than that, I wouldn't change a thing. Like, I think even at my level, if it ended tomorrow, I would have to be nothing but grateful. Think of all the shit people could watch and listen to. The fact, really, honestly, the fact that 10 people listen to what I have to say is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Thousands.
Yeah.
So it's really, even at this level, it's just like, I consider it a blessing. I really do.
Dustin, any thoughts on your obsolescence before we go?
Yeah, I'm aware of this all the time. Just because I'm always, no matter what, before I worked for Last Stand, as soon as I became an adult, I always felt like I needed to have a backup plan in case something goes wrong. And that doesn't change for me now. And it's not that I'm actively trying to do something different, but I always got to figure out, like, if Last Stand doesn't exist tomorrow for whatever reason, Colin's dead, canceled, or both, I don't know, for some reason, or he decides we don't want to do this anymore.
Colin's brought up on racketeering charges.
Yeah. If something happens, have I done enough professionally that I can keep doing this in some degree? Kind of like what you said, Colin, even if it's just streaming for 80 people, that though it's not a big audience, but those 80 people really like me and support me, something like that. So that's what I'm always working towards and have been for the last few years, is just, it sounds gross and feels gross to be like, well, I'm trying to build up my brand so I can, do this. It's not a good way to put it. I need to figure out a better way to put it. But
that's kind of the insurance policy in this business, though. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's to be able to, if you're able to monetize yourself, right. That's the best boon that you could possibly have.
Right.
Totally. And I become, sometimes my awareness vacillates, my active awareness vacillates on how many people rely on me now. That it wasn't the case back in the day, right? Like at IGN or Kind of Funny, no one relied on me. It was just, I was one of the people. But now, like, I have to remain, I can't do anything crazy or leave or do, whatever I want to do. There's like a family of people that need to be somehow be taken care of. And that's a cognizant part of it too, about maintaining and growing. I mean, and it's interesting talking about this at a time when the business is growing. I mean, it's doing great, and I appreciate everyone, but it's funny that the audience that we have now is a fraction of the audience that I used to have, and that to me was like real fame and real power. But I don't really miss it either, because it was anonymous. Like, the people that came to Last Stand are like the hardcore people that were not just there because you were at IGN or whatever.
That's a great point.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. That was a fun topic. Thank you guys for indulging me and hearing me out. Dig, let's end with your topic tucked deep here into the show for monetization purposes, maybe.
Well, still, there's one word you can't say during this part.
Is it the C-U-N-T word?
Yeah, that will get the episode demonetized if you say that. To my understanding, at least it did before.
That's out.
There's no way that's true.
Dude, it happened to Sacred.
I say that constantly in my YouTube videos, and there's no problem. But like, I don't know. Maybe they change things.
Yeah.
I don't know,
whatever. I mean, if this episode gets, we are funded through Patreon. We don't need to be monetized.
I will say that is. Yeah, let's move on. Let's
just say it. Do it.
No. Just get out of the way.
No. We got to introduce the topic first.
Oh yeah.
Can we do the bleep? Can we do the editing bleep? I don't know if Ben or Dustin are in for that.
It's too much.
It's annoying. We'll just risk it. Let's risk it. Risk it all.
All right, let's go for it. Let's roll the dice, my friends. Yeah. Well, my big thing with this was how can we take a little coin out of Colin's pocket? I just thought it would be a fun topic. I love that it's going last because, well, let me just say, as I set this up, I want you guys to channel your most aggravated moments because I really want this to be authentic. Okay. We're talking about favorite curse words here. Let me start with this. Are you guys too young to remember the great TV show Inside the Actors Studio with host James Lipton?
Yeah.
I remember that. Of course.
Yeah.
Broadcast from New York from the New School. He would interview directors and actors.
Hold on a sec. He was made fun of on SNL by
Will Ferrell,
where he would like interview actors and he'd have like a huge stack of cards that he would pull from. Yeah. Because it was kind of like,
known for his insane level of research way before Hot Ones was a thing. And he would always close the shows with these famous people with sort of this roundup questionnaire. And one of the getting to know you questions was what's your favorite curse word? And the actor or actress demure up there would have to say, kind of own it. And I kind of love that, and I love this going at the end because that was always at the end of his shows. So that's where I got this from. But and again, you guys got to really channel your most aggravated moment. Here's what made me think of it yesterday. Somebody cut me off while driving. It's always road rage for me. I don't really have any other kind of anger. It's like road rage. And I got so angry. Like I didn't do anything. I didn't really react, but I was on my way to the doctor and I couldn't shake the anger. It was so weird. I don't know if it's just because I'm exhausted. I haven't been sleeping that much, but then I was like, inside you got this inner monologue. You're cursing. All the usual suspects are coming out. Right. And then I was thinking, I think about this a lot. And this is one of the things I want you guys to weigh in on. Because I'm of two minds with just cursing in general. There's one part of me dating way back that sort of wants to channel this kind of elegant, classy, old school TV thing. I think of like Johnny Carson or the Rat Pack, right? This like demure sense of funny, but classy. The consummate gentleman. No real crude language, no rough language. And then the other side of Dagan, right? The Jekyll and Hyde dynamic is I think if we're going to paint, why are we going to rob ourselves of a certain amount of brushes, right? Like we want all the colors. We want our palette to be as broad and as extensive as possible. And it's all about expression, right? That's really what curse words are. It's part of our language, how we express ourselves in a conversation, in writing, right? So that's all. As I throw it over to you guys, you could give me your thoughts as you want to, but I was just thinking, what are my go-tos? And you authentically have to be in that moment. Like you have to channel the driving, you have to channel working on something for hours and then the computer crashes while rendering. I'm no stranger to that. That type of level of spontaneous anger. What comes out? What do you blurb? What words do you like? And
for Dustin, it's racial epithets.
Oh, yeah. You can't stop me.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dave. Good.
Let him ring.
For me, it's two things before I hand it over to you guys. I go with cocksucker every time. Wow. It just comes out. I don't know what,
How about cocksmoker?
Cocksmoker would be that would be better.
Yeah.
Because it would be better in front of the kid. Like I try not to curse
in front of the kids.
Is it any better? I don't know. It's very visceral.
See, I always, and I tried that. Like put in some ridiculous thing in place of that. put in some, I don't know, insert kid joke insult here, but it never works. And then the other one I go to is motherfucker. Those are the two that just come out naturally. That's just part of, that's just an extension. I get mad. That's genuinely what's coming out without any thought. That's just spontaneously what kind of flies out of my mouth. So that's all I wanted to know from you guys. What do you go for? What's your go-to when you get angry in those moments? And also, if you want to, like, where do you stand on cursing in general? Are you against it? Do you advocate for it? I'll go over to you first, Chris. What do you think about this one?
Oh man, I can't. I was ruined from an early age. Like, just New York is such a potty mouth place. It's really it's insane. So like, I don't know. I've tried to take it out of my vocabulary to no avail. Like, it's impossible. It's part of the way I speak, and it's so funny because people just have accepted it at this point. I remember when I was younger. Or when I was like specifically in my early 20s and I would go to family functions and I would speak how I normally speak to like my friends and everything. And people would be like, oh my God, relax. But now it's like, now I'm rubbing off on people. like my parents curse way more now because of me, I think. And it's so funny because they with rare exception would curse. Like they never did. I think because they were trying to set a good example for me. But the second I left, they no longer cared. But I remember it was still jarring because I remember going to, we went to the city, I think after Christmas, but before New Year's. It might've been like the 28th or like the 29th of December. And anybody who's been to New York City around that time knows it's very, very hectic around that time. Everybody's trying to see the Rockefeller tree. Everybody's trying to see all these light shows. And so we went to the city. I took my mom and some of my cousins and nieces and nephews who were kind of new in town. They wanted to see it. This is in like 2018. And they came down because they wanted to see the tree. They wanted to see the city during Christmas time. And I was like, yeah, let's go. I love the city. I love being down there. And me and my mom got separated from the rest of the crowd in this big crowd. And we were like, all right, let's go here. And my mom is so small. My mom is like 4'11" Hispanic lady. And she never curses. And then I brought her into this. We were trying to cross this crowd. And what they did was they closed the street, but the sidewalks were still open. So hundreds of people funneling like into these like tightly packed sidewalks, moving at like a snail's pace. I think it took us like 25 minutes to reach the end of the block.
Jesus.
Because it was that many people crowded because everybody wanted to see the light show. And I have never heard her curse more in my life than in that moment. And I could not stop fucking laughing. It was just like, what the fuck is going on over here? Why would anybody come in here? Like, why would you? She was looking at this girl carrying a baby. That was the funniest interaction I've ever seen. Was just this group of people funneled into this, like, my baby. Like, I heard, these were verbatim lines that I would hear. It's like, could you stop pressing into my spine? And it was like, and just people being like, you think I fucking want to be here? Just like all this, like I was crying, but I'd never heard her let loose like that. But it was all the usual suspects. It's like fucking shit and all this stuff. But I don't know, man. I can't get it out of my vocabulary. It's just there. But one of my favorite, and it was probably because of all the Australian friends that I'd made over the years. It was that word that I don't want to jinx the show now, because there's something, because it doesn't feel it. People say it's a slur. No, it isn't. I'm sorry. Like CUNT is not a slur. Relax. Like it's just
say it.
I don't know, because now I'm paranoid.
Too much tension. You're.
Well, what I love about that word is that if you turn it into a verb, it's so much like I would say sometimes like what's going on with this cunted show? You know,
there you go.
Like or like the ed at the end of it just turns it into like a different word that I really, really love. But I don't know. Like I'm a big fan of all of it. Like I like all of it. Strangely enough, cocksucker is not really in my vocabulary at all. Like that's like a very like mafia.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like
cocksucker.
it's very Italian.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's just there's something about it that like I never heard it really growing up. But I try not to rely solely on curse words. Sometimes I like to, if I'm trying to really like insult a person or like if I'm like having road rage or something, I pick up on a lot of mannerisms that my friends have. Which is like, I remember being in a car with my friend Paul and he got so pissed. This dude cut him off and he just goes, death. he cast this like some spell. And I was like, that's so much funnier than just fuck this guy.
I like
you know
that.
I mean? Yeah, like death.
More creative.
Yeah, I like words like troglodyte a lot and things like that. Like more like sophisticated, like scientific, almost like you're trying to insult a person's intelligence in a way that they would find difficult to understand.
Yeah.
I appreciate words like that. I'm sure there's like a bunch of other ones that I'm not remembering, but cunted is such a funny, like I love that word.
Just add an ED at the end.
Yeah.
That feels like a kind of like a angry video game nerd thing where you kind of adapt a swear word into something else. I always think of him saying ass. Like totally randomly, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
Classic.
Ass. Dude, it's all in the delivery, man.
It's a way to blunt the word, though. It's kind of like when you inadvertently call somebody that, and then you're like, I said you were acting like that. Yeah. I didn't say you were that. It's like a way to blunt the whole thing. Yeah, it's like somehow that blunts it.
Dude, yeah. Backwater bitch was another one that I heard a lot. It was like, I love that one.
I like the alliteration. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I feel like James Rolfe, I don't know if this is, I mean, it's not commonly a popular swear word, but I feel like he invented the shitload of fuck. That's
I think he did invent
that.
Yeah, he did.
Thing.
For sure.
He was a curse word. He was a shitload of fuck is such a good, like he really was like a curse word pioneer in the early.
So good.
In the early, something my aunt used to say a lot, which is, it's not a curse, but I always found it so funny, was Jesus wept. Have you ever heard that?
Yes.
It's so wild. It's like, gee, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm a big fan of the word fuck. I have a really bad mouth. And I'm sure you've noticed this, Dagan. I have by far the worst mouth in our entire family. I don't think it's even close as far as the way I talk. And I'm not necessarily proud of it, although I brought this up in the past. There are studies suggesting that people who curse indiscriminately are more honest in their delivery and the things that they're saying, or whatever, which is interesting.
All right.
But I remember mom and dad kind of fighting a little bit against my inclusion of curses as I got older, in my late teens and then in my 20s, and then just kind of gave up. And it's not that I'm always cursing left, right, and center. I just will throw a fuck or a shit all the time into the, and I don't, some people are like, oh, that's trashy or whatever. I'm like, I don't know, not really. I have a pretty big vocabulary, I think. I actually think it's funnier in some sense. And again, not taking anything very seriously in most times in my life. It makes things funnier. It does bring some levity into it. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
There you go.
It's like just a funny thing to say to someone.
That's something that I think is underappreciated about him. It's like, it's not really, because I think certain people view it as like an aggressive thing, or like you're being unnecessarily like strong about it. But I actually feel like it's the opposite. I feel like it is this tool of levity, where it's like, I'm clearly not taking this seriously if I'm cursing. It's just something inherent to it. Like, I remember my dad used to call me a dipshit a lot. Like whenever I would do something like dumb. And I remember thinking that was so funny because it was just so not serious.
I think another great way to augment cursing is, and quite a few people have a problem with this, but Jesus Christ, Jesus fucking Christ,
Christ
Jesus
Almighty,
Christ Almighty.
I like Christ Almighty a lot.
Yeah, Christ. You're just saying Jesus, or just Jesus. Like,
don't you remember mom and dad like calling us out for that?
Yeah,
like the taking God's name in vain thing. That was one thing for sure, more so than the language.
I don't know where the language thing for me came from. Where do you think it came from that I just became so like, just
very few people in our family? Our Aunt Joni had a mouth for sure. I think that's definitely been dialed back as she's gotten older. And I would hear grandpa. He was a really interesting one, our maternal grandfather, because he would say things that were off color, but without using the actual words. Like he would always say your sister's ass. that was like, oh, your sister's ass if he dropped something or something like that. And it was just, you got the context, but it didn't have the actual words. So he could say it like in front of the kids. It's actually a terrible thing to say.
Yeah.
You know, but it's kind of funny because it doesn't use the language.
Yeah, it's always enjoyable whenever it's like a mix of normal curse words by themselves are fun, but like I like when people get weird with them. Like I remember I don't know where I picked this up from, but I remember like recently I stubbed my toe and I said "fuck me dead." It's just like, and there were people in the house. It was like friends of mine. I was like, what the fuck?
Fuck me is a funny one I say from time to time too. Like, fuck me. Like,
fuck me is a big one. Yeah, the good one.
Dustin, go on.
My friend Brandon used to say, he would say fuck me and he would say fuck me in the ass. And this is something I would pick up because he just thought it was really funny to say fuck me in the ass.
I love that.
And this was around the time that we were starting to get going on our website, and we were at PlayStation Experience in the press room, and I was playing the shitty PSVR demo for I think it was the Impatient? There was like the Until Dawn spinoff on PSVR.
Oh, yeah.
And I played it, and it scared the fuck out of me. And I'm trying to remember if I just said fuck me or if I said fuck me in the ass in the press room. And the guy running the demo was like, I could hear him laughing at me. I was like, oh, that was unprofessional for me to say fuck me in the ass in the PR room.
That reminds me, I sent you guys that video, right, of that news reporter in the middle of that drive-by when he's interviewing.
What does he say in that again?
He said, so what I love about that video is like this dude, he's interviewing this lady. This lady's like, my name's Yolanda or whatever. And then a drive-by happens super close. Like there's guns like shooting out of the car, and he goes, "Sweet mother of Christmas." And then he proceeds to say, "What the fuck?" Which I love that so much. Just the order of operations you would assume would be like not that, like you would assume that it would be what the fuck first at the very least. But
my friend that. Brandon, who I mentioned, he's the one. He's really is just a mastercraft of adding swear words and different things to anything possible. I have one particular story. Chris, you broke the seal on this word, so I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah. You're welcome.
He came over for New Year's Eve, and he's like, oh, are we going to put on Cunt Clark? Talking about Dick Clark. I said, Brandon, his name is already Dick. Like, you just switched one word for another. So he was always a master. He still is a master at doing that. But Dagan, I was thinking because I feel like there are go-to swear words I have when I'm angry, but there are words that I like better that I think are funnier. If I'm mad, if I stub my toe, I'm gonna say fuck or fucker or something, something like that. That's gonna be the go-to. But I don't know if I'm like playing a game or something, I beat a hard part of the game, I will definitely call the game a bitch without fail. Bitch, like that. Something. I think the word bitch is absolutely hilarious. Maybe it's misogyny deep within me. I don't know, but the word bitch, 10 out of 10.
I like imagine. It's a good word. I like imagining you not screaming it, but you like almost like under you like bitch.
Yeah.
Like under your breath almost.
Yeah.
It's good.
Holly, I mentioned this to Holly, but I always tell her what the different topics are. And she has a particular favorite swear word I wanted to share because it's uncommon. She loves the word bastard. She's like, bastard. I like that. I think it's very unique. It's very. I
remember when I was a kid, like I don't know where I got this card catalog of orders of curses in my mind, with my parents, but being like, so bastard and bitch and damn are not as bad, and then like shit's kind of in the middle,
right? And
then fuck, it was like the word you couldn't broach.
Well, bastard, bitch, and damn are all other things, right? They were leveraged as curse words.
That's true, yeah.
Right? Which is weird.
Although damn, I don't know. Happen? I don't know if
goddamn is an interesting one. Like what is that? Yeah.
Goddamn's a good one.
Yeah.
Goddamn it, I say goddamn it probably a lot actually. Now that I think about
goddamn it's a yeah. That's I didn't even think of that one. Definitely. Yeah. My parents would not like that. We need some new ones though. Why aren't there new? Like we need to increase the effectiveness.
Well, we do get new ones because words that were fine before become them. That's how we get new ones. Like I don't know what happened with the R word that means stupid. I don't know why that's like a problem.
Yeah, me neither.
I think we
gotta reclaim it. I was saying that to Micah. She's like, can you just go away? You know, like we gotta it needs to be reclaimed. Like, what is so bad about that word?
Yeah, that's not.
What is different from that word about them being dumb, stupid, whatever? I don't know, man.
Every replacement word for that is just as bad, really. You know? So like, I don't really. I don't know. That's one I can't abide by. Like, I can understand a lot of things about like social progress, right? Like, I get most things, to be honest. But then like this one, it's like, nah, man, it's retarded.
Right. Yeah. When I was in school, there was a thing that came up where teachers like, you can't say retarded. And so kids would just call each other mentally challenged then. And
that's
eventually
so
that became taboo.
Yeah, that's worse,
and,
you know?
And now people, I hear, you know, there's, you're autistic. It just moves to, it hops from one word to the next until eventually that word becomes the offensive slang. And then it's like, oh, we got to make up a new word or new way to refer to these people because people keep using this word.
What's interesting about that too is that there are certain words that I remember being like completely off the table. Like fuck was like that. That was like a holy grail. Like that was like that was a no word for a really long time. Yeah. And now it's like in Marvel movies. You know what I mean?
That's incredible. Like, you're right.
Where it's like, I think I heard Spider-Man say it in like one of the Spider-Man. I can't remember if it was like
weird.
I can't remember if it was like Civil War or something, like one of those Marvel movies. And I'm like, what the hell is this?
It was a time that would give you an NC-17.
Dude, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Now it's in a Disney movie.
It was in Spider-Man 2 coming soon to PlayStation 5 where he's like, how the fuck is this SSD so quick?
Can I just tell you guys about retard? Though?
Yeah, please.
Like that word.
Tell me about it.
My kids, 13 and 16, you say that word and they just stop in their tracks. It's like the most offensive thing you could say.
Awesome.
It's like, it's a huge general, it's like, like the clutch. It's like a full on clutch the pearls.
Yeah.
It's like, how did this happen?
Nurture.
So wild.
It's legit. Like it's authentic. They are authentically offended by it.
Good to know.
I feel like that word.
I'm gonna drop that word. I'm gonna get on the mic to welcome everyone. I'm gonna be like, thank you to all you retards for coming here tonight.
Meanwhile, I'm walking around not in front of them, but you know, like even as I have this conversation with you guys, I'm retreating back into that mode of Dagan where it's like, this isn't nice. Like the word cocksucker, that's terrible to say. Like,
well, because it implies that you're gay. Right. I mean, that's the implication.
I don't like that. That shouldn't be coming out of my mouth.
Yeah, but it's
not the way you mean it. That's the whole thing about.
Of course,
well, no, but that's the whole thing about calling things gay, right? It's like, at least in my own experience, I can't speak for others. In my own experience,
of course
no one that was saying that word around us was literally talking about homosexuality.
No, of course not.
Never. Like,
it was just.
But I understand why you might not want to. You know, that's a word I understand checking.
I totally get that. I understand,
but you don't think about it that way.
That to me makes more like a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Because
or the other F word.
Yeah.
Because in ninth grade, and I'm sure at the same time for you guys in 2000. I mean, anytime up until 2010.
I was in college using that word for sure.
Dude, in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, they say that word. It was totally fine, but now
that word was in my vocabulary up until 2 minutes ago.
Oh,
right when he started this episode of this podcast.
I get certain ones, you know, but like I don't know, man. The R word is not the R word. Let's relax.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it's a sensitive one. That's a sensitive one. I think you know what I think about. I think about people. We all have people like this in our lives. Well, Chris was saying about his mom. You know, like Helene doesn't curse. It's just not part of her natural vocabulary. And so, I admire it because those rare occasions where she might slip and say the F word, you stop. Your ears are pricked. It's like something definitely happened. It's so much more effective coming from those people where you're going to hear me cursing all the time. It's like a common part of my language, my interaction with you. So it's like, is it even effective, you know, as an adjective or whatever?
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I think about my aunt and like some of my other family members who would censor themselves when I was a kid, and now they don't care. I think it's really just like a thing for kids, to be honest, because you don't want them getting in trouble at school from stuff that they heard at home, I guess. But she would say, "Oh, sugar," you know, or like, "Oh, fuzz."
I like that better somehow, though.
But like now I come home and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? It's like, oh my God, what happened?
How do people get so jaded, right? It's like,
yeah.
All right, now I want you to bleep out the cocksuckers. I feel really bad about that one. I don't know where that one, like trace back. It's like Chris was saying, it's like a product of your environment.
100%.
All the Italian dudes you grew up with and all the older kids. It was basically, where I learned it from? Because Colin was saying a lot of people in our family, it wasn't really a thing. In our general environment of growing up on Long Island, yes. In our immediate vicinity, definitely not a regular thing to hear cursing other than a couple of people. But it was the older siblings, boys and girls, by the way, of my friends in the neighborhood. It was always the older kids, the kids that were 3, 4, 5 years older than us.
Yeah.
That's where we learned it all from, for sure. We had to. Where else would it come from? Right? Older cousins, older siblings, the older kids.
Now you learn it from Fortnite.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it is probably a good thing for parents to. I think parents, I don't know. I'm not a parent, Dagan, you are. So maybe this will ring true or not. But it would make sense to me that parents know that kids are eventually going to swear or may swear.
Sure.
But at the same time, it would make sense to me as a parent to try to tamp it down just because kids won't have necessarily the skills to turn on and off that language, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like growing up, my parents did not swear. They were not against swearing. It's not like we didn't watch stuff that's swearing, but we didn't swear in the house. I very rarely heard my parents swear. And then as I got older, we just kind of started swearing at some point where we just
old enough then.
Didn't care. And it's one of those things that all of us can control when we do and don't. It's, it's like, okay, and when you're around the younger kids, you don't say this or you don't act, say these types of things. And it's just like, so I think that makes sense. If Ben was on the show, he is really interesting in that he doesn't teach his kids to not swear at all because he knows that they will, but he teaches them specifically that they have to, if they're going to swear, it has to be an appropriate situation. Not that his kids are running around like, oh, fuck this shit or something. But if they severely hurt themselves and they say shit, then he doesn't. It's like, well, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I don't want to speak for him and what that. I don't want to make him sound bad or whatever.
No, yeah. There's like a time and place. That sounds like a legit way to kind of instruct your kids and kind of guide them. I mean, not my daughter, no. But my son, definitely in the last year or so, I could see that he's testing. He's like testing the waters when he said, he'll say shit at dinner time. Ooh. And he'll not be able, what? Like, so, pump the brakes, man. Like, whatever. Like, but I could see him doing it to see what's acceptable.
Right. Yeah.
And to see what the reaction's going to be. He hasn't said the C word yet. No. But you know what I mean? They do definitely see like, how can I fit in with this interaction? Am I able to talk like they talk? And, we're not cursing at the dinner table, but I'm sure they're here. I'm sure he's hearing it in the lunchroom.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What grade is he in?
He's in 7th now.
Oh yes. He's hearing it constantly.
Yeah.
I heard that in like the 3rd grade, like it's absolutely, especially now, like especially with like internet and just like meeting people online and dude, pregame and postgame lobbies were.
Oh, did you see the thing I thought it was funny. I put in the chat, the Discord for our company. Let me see if I can find it. Where someone just said there's a teen suicide rates were their lowest when people were allowed to say whatever they wanted on the internet, and they put like a
I did see
suicide graph, and then it went like really dips.
It dips around the time
in like the early 2010s, and then it goes back up. And people are saying that Xbox Live. It's not really. It's just
no. It's just funny, but like that's real. Like I don't know, man. Like even just beyond curse words, like I remember just like the deeply like vicious language that was just used in pregame and postgame lobbies. Even just not even towards other people, but just to describe like if we lost really badly. In like a game of Halo or Modern Warfare, it would just be like that would be like, we got raped today. Like they absolutely molested us.
Yeah.
And it's just like, not really. Like it's really far off. But like, I don't know, man. It's so funny. Just the hyperbole of it.
Yeah.
It's just so obnoxious.
You take a word and you turn it. Yeah. You could turn a word into something completely different too.
Yeah.
It is kind of a fascinating thing. I just feel like we're relying on the same, it's like the same exact arsenal
Yeah.
Since I've been born, at least, you know, nothing new really.
Just different ways of organizing. Like if there was a Mount Rushmore of curse words, it would be fuck, shit. What are the other two? Would you like?
Bitch.
What would you? Bitch and damn, maybe.
Yeah. I would say. Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to apologize to everybody for cocksucker. I feel really bad about it.
No,
I don't know why it comes out.
I'm not accepting your apology.
Yeah,
because it's awesome. I think it's so funny that that's the go-to. That's awesome. I think it's great.
Look at this cocksucker.
Yeah, cocksucker, motherfucker, because the whole thing rhymes and it's a very, you know.
Yeah.
Has
saying that is almost
like an M&M bar.
Yeah, that's too much. Like cocksucker, motherfucker is too much.
Yeah, it's too long.
Like definitely pick and choose. Bob and weave.
I'm already not angry by the time I'm done saying that.
Oh yeah,
right. Like I counted 10 essentially. Yeah, but see, I even having this conversation, I kind of want to retreat back into like, you know, who's really good with this? I know you guys are big fans of Seinfeld. And I always felt like his stand-up, obviously, if you watch the show and you listen to enough of his stand-up, you realize this guy doesn't use curse words.
Yeah.
But it never seems contrived or artificial. It's just kind of like his specific brand of humor doesn't require that. You know, it's not, he's not being the goody, like G-rated comic, just his style. Right. And I always thought it seemed like genuine. I kind of admire that. But there is kind of this like Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, you know, on camera thing that they were doing at the roasts and stuff where they were being irreverent. You know, they were having fun, smoking and drinking, completely dismantling each other with words, but they couldn't curse. Now they were cursing when the cameras were off in the green room and shit.
Of course, yeah.
But there's just something about that sort of level of elegance that speaks to me.
Yeah.
But I grew up on Long Island with a bunch of potty mouths, and I'm kind of polluted by it, I think.
Yeah, I would suspect if I had kids, I would make a pretty significant effort not to curse.
You got to dial it back in front of them for sure.
Yeah. Not even because I'm like morally objective to it. I just don't want to hear complaints. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be the main reason. I would be like, I don't want my kid to curse at some kid's house, and then I get a call, or like at school, and then I have to go pick him up because he got in trouble or something. That's the main reason. I don't give a shit if he curses.
And your wife, not to mention. I've slipped up and then I get the earful. And especially because, you know, coming from her, she doesn't talk like that. So she could legitimately have a beef with me saying something in front of the kids, which you do sometimes. You know what I mean? It's like you don't realize the context. You just fly off at the mouth. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. Where do you guys stand with this? Do I try to... We always say we're going to try to make an effort. Dustin and I laugh on Punching Up all the time because it's specifically a Nintendo show. So it's like, should we dial it back for the Nintendo show? And the answer is always no.
Episode 1, you said at the beginning, you were like, I'm going to not swear on this show. And that it didn't even last the episode. And I'm glad. I don't want to, dude, our Nintendo show is not intended for family audiences.
It's not intended.
It's not Nintendo.
I thought the same exact thing. I hate that.
I hate you guys.
Nintentional. That was one of the names of the show. Nintentional something, right?
We had a couple of ones that I was like, I kind of like this one. I know.
Yeah.
I won't even say them because maybe we'll use
it. Yeah, we got to save them in case.
We got to save them.
In case we make a third, like 7 other Nintendo
shows. Yeah, why not?
The moral of the story is it's ingrained. I'm not going to be able to stop cursing. It's too far now. I'm going to be 50.
Yeah.
You know, it's over. It's the way I talk.
Fair enough. Well, my friends, Dig, are you satisfied?
Absolutely.
All right, good. That was a good episode. Fun episode. Let's go around the horn and say goodbye to everyone. Dustin, let's say goodbye to you first, my friend. Have a good weekend.
Goodbye. I'm excited for the weekend. Gonna hang out at the gaming convention tomorrow. Spend too much money since I got to buy Game Boy games for my analog pocket that I got. So I'm gonna go overpay for some games and hang out with some listeners. Hopefully it'll already be done by the time this is out, but hopefully I see somebody there, so at least one of you there. We'll see what happens.
Anyone.
One person, that would be great. But glad to be on. I think I messed up the schedule because this was intended to be the Micah Chris episode, but last week I was supposed to be on and Micah agreed to switch with me. Was there a Micah Chris episode that already happened, or was this going to be number 2?
We already did. I think we did a constellation before.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay, good. I didn't mess anything up then. Good.
No, everything's fine.
Yeah, Micah switched out with me. I was very sick and jet lagged last week, so I was glad I could be on this week.
Great. Well, glad to have you on. Chris, goodbye to you. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, I will. My parents are coming in tomorrow night. So
that's right.
Nice. Nice.
I got to get the place clean and ready. But
how long are they staying with you?
About a week.
A week, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, have fun. Nice. That's a long time.
I like my parents. I like my family. It's not going to be super bad, but
yeah. I like
find stuff. I
like my parents too, but I don't think I could do a week.
Really?
Yeah.
You definitely couldn't do a week.
No.
I could probably do longer than like a week. I don't mind it. It's just like it's more just finding stuff for them to do in the time that they're here. You know what I mean? It's like, oh man,
I hate entertaining people, dude. I hate it.
Yeah, I'm not big on it, but we'll see.
Well, have fun and give them our kindest regards.
I will.
Especially your mom, who's 4'11", as we learned today. Dagan, goodbye to you. Have a good weekend.
See you fucking goddamn son of a bitches.
Well, tomorrow, when we're recording, we have to record Knockback still.
We do.
I also have to record something for Lilymo later on tomorrow as well. So I have.
Oh, you're an animal. What is going on with you?
And I got to go mow the lawn probably now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. Maybe I'll do it. We'll see. Yeah. Get it done. So, all right, my friends. Well, I appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Day Media, Constellation, etc. Patreon.com/lastdaymedia for early ad-free access and so on. Lastdaymedia.store for merch. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye. Constellation is a product of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by and is directed and hosted by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is my brother, Dagan Moriarty. The show is produced by Last Stand's executive producer, Dustin Furman, and is edited by associate producer, Ben Smith. All Last Stand theme music is by Ramon Narvaez, and all of our graphics and logos are by Dagan Moriarty. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's podcasts, including Constellation, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest support tier, and we're infinitely grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor.